Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to a special franchise flashback episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we're going to be doing a basically review, go over, talk about our pros, cons, all this fun stuff of the Indiana Jones franchise with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny coming out this upcoming week. We decided, hey, we haven't talked about Indy in a while. Let's go ahead and talk about all these movies. Brian claims that only 3 movies came out, but there are 4, and we will be talking about the 4th one, which we have talked about the 4th one before on, I think it was Weekend Crusaders a couple years back. So we maybe even have talked about Raiders at one point, but we are going to touch base on all 4 films. But as you can see, Brian is a really, really big fan, in case you haven't noticed behind him there. So I'm going to let Brian kind of drive this a little bit more. Because this is his franchise. This would be the equivalent. Would you say is this kind of the equivalent of like Jurassic Park for me? Except
Probably. When I was a kid, there was basically 2 things. There was Star Wars and there was Indiana Jones, and that was it. Those were the 2 franchises.
But here's the thing: you've become a jaded Star Wars fan now, so Indiana Jones is kind of your last grasp.
Yeah, there have been others since, and obviously there are new franchises and things I enjoy as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Star Wars has lost its luster a little bit, and even the films that I love, I think have been moved down my list a little bit. Indiana Jones movies, we'll get into this.
Go right into it. Go right
into it. So
first of all,
I want to talk about I want to talk about our first introductions, where we were when the first Indiana Jones, or where your first experience with Indiana Jones came out. For me, this movie came out in 1981. So I would have not yet turned 9 years old. I was 8 years old when this movie came out, when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. And it was just called Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is not Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which they revised it to later on. I will say...
You're telling me a George Lucas movie didn't get revised?
Which I will say, though, makes alphabetizing movies on your shelf. Just think, wait, do I put this up here in the R's or in the I's?
At that point, you just say they're all Indiana Jones and just put them in fucking numerical order.
Exactly. Exactly. Or better yet, this just be on the top of your shelf. Best movies. So this movie came out. Honestly, when this movie came out, I didn't go see it right away. I didn't go to the movies a whole lot when I was a kid. I mean, I went once in a long while. It was a Disney movie or a Star Wars movie, things like that. And I remember this movie came out. My older sister went to see it with, I think, some friends. And it might have gone even at the same time. But then me and my brother said, no, we want to go see Empire Strikes Back for like the 37th time. So we went over here and saw this. We don't want to see Raiders of the Lost Ark, but who cares about that? Because I don't think we'd seen like real previews for it, didn't know what it was about. It's like, ooh, it's an archaeologist on an adventure, woohoo.
I mean, this was the 80s. Trailers were really not that good.
Oh, right. And that's when you saw a trailer. You couldn't see them on the internet. So unless you happened to see a movie that had that trailer in front of it, then you wouldn't see that trailer. I mean, the TV, they might have some 30-second commercials on it or something, but then even then, it's just if you happen to stumble across it. You couldn't seek out a trailer or a commercial for something. So didn't know anything about this movie. My sister came back and said, oh, she really loved it. And then a friend of mine started showing me I think it was trading cards or something that he had. And he showed me this one picture. It was the picture of Forrestal, after he'd had the spikes go through him and he would he'd been killed in that first opening temple. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this actually looks like it could be a fun movie. And I went and saw it. And I love this movie. This movie, I mean, Indiana Jones, I think to this day is still one of the most iconic characters in all of film history. Because he's he's the adventurer, he's the hero, but he's not like this infallible, invincible hero. He gets his ass kicked a lot. He makes mistakes, he gets beat up. But again, he's an intelligent guy, which we were just talking about in another show, that we like our intelligent protagonists. But it was just the fact that it was George Lucas and it was Steven Spielberg and it was Harrison Ford, who obviously he was Han Solo, is all I knew him as a kid. This was just like the triumvirate making this movie that is just so much fun. And I mean, it was supposed to be a throwback to the old serials of the 30s and 40s and whatever, which I had never seen at that point in my life. I still have seen very few of those kind of things, but I at least know what they're referring to. But so like adults, like my dad, maybe he enjoyed that kind of throwback thing. But to me, this was just a fun adventure. Before I go any further, I want to know, what was your first experience with, or your introduction to Indiana Jones?
When did Temple of Doom come out?
Temple of Doom would have been 1984.
Oh yeah, so the first 2 movies came out before I was born. So but for me, much like Star Wars, because all 3 Star Wars films were out before I was born too. all just like with Star Wars, this was all brought to my world through my dad. My dad was a huge, I mean, still is, but not as much as me. He was a super huge Star Wars fan. I mean, he used to have like all the old Star Wars books, like, you know, all the stories and the subplots. Like, I still remember that. Not that I read the book, I still remember that book, or the whatever one it was, where Chewbacca died. And I remember looking at that book like it was like cursed, because how dare they kill Chewbacca? Like,
I remember Vector Prime, but I'm not sure about
that. It's like I remember the cover, and I remember there'd be times when I was young and I just looked at that book like, I don't want to read that book.
Yeah, not that expanded universe stuff.
Yeah, I was like, not that I ever read those books anyway, but I always looked at that book like, But this or that and Indiana Jones were, and James Bond, but I didn't care about James Bond. Mm-hmm. But I did like watching Star Wars, obviously, and Indiana Jones was fun for me. Now, granted, for me, I think, and maybe that's like and it's drastically changed now, especially going back and rewatching all four of these in the past, like, you know, few days. When I was younger, the one that I always saw was Temple of Doom. I don't think I actually ever watched Raiders, all the outside of like the iconic opening. I don't think I've ever actually watched Raiders, probably until like they released them all out on Blu-ray and we got the Blu-ray set. And then I watched them all. And because I remember watching Raiders going...
You didn't watch them all until Blu-ray existed?
It was one of those things... Well, no, because I watched... Like, Last Crusade was the last movie I ever saw to drive-in.
Okay.
But for me, my brain, I thought I had always seen all of them. But I'm going back on it when I went back and watched the Blu-ray thing. I was watching Raiders. It's like, I don't remember. Like,
yeah, because Blu-ray is like what, 2005?
It might have been the DVD set.
Okay.
But I was watching Raiders. I was like I remember the iconic, like, the guy with the sword, and he pulls him up and shoots him, and obviously, you know, the arc scene, you know, because it's iconic, and you know the opening because it's kind of, it's like everything else in between, like the bad dates and the when he first sees Marion and the fire in the bar. Like, I was like, I don't remember any of this. Like, this all just, it feels new to me. And I was just like, maybe it's because, like, as a kid, it was before my brain retained what I watched. But I remember Temple of Doom like the back of my fucking hand. I've watched Temple of Doom so many damn times. And it probably was because of Short Round. It was, even though it's the darkest movie, it's the most kid-friendly in a way. If that makes any sense. And I'll talk about that further when we actually talk about Temple of Doom. But my dad loved Indiana Jones. He had the Indiana Jones hat. He had a leather jacket. Granted,
I never had that.
My dad had the whip because he dressed up as Indy for Halloween, and he even got like these little like head. Not that Indy ever had this, but he had like those little head shrinkers, and so he would like put them on his belt for like Halloween one year and stuff like that. So I grew up in a household that was, for the most part, Bond, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones, and then I obviously, and pro wrestling. But I like, you know, that was my introduction to movies, was watching those. But based off like now, you know, Indiana Jones, like you said, he's an iconic character. Without Indiana Jones, we probably wouldn't have had Nathan Drake. Without Indiana Jones, probably wouldn't have had Lara Croft. Without Indiana Jones, granted, even though it's not even remotely the same thing, the character of Owen Gray from Jurassic World probably wouldn't have had that kind of character. These are all characters that are basically based off of an Indiana Jones type character. They all have elements of what Indiana Jones is. Cocky, funny, kind of an idiot at times in terms of like he thinks he can outsmart, but he's not. But he is clever. But he's also a bonehead at a lot of times too. He isn't going to win every fight, but he can win fights, you know, and then he just is, he's quick on his feet, which is a lot of his intelligence. And he's a guy who shows if you study and learn your history, it can save your life.
Stay in school, kids.
Exactly. It was like one of those things, like, he's an
Say
actual
your prayers, eat your vitamins.
brother. But that was what Indiana Jones was for me. And that's why when we had our summer preview thing, where we did our rankings and everything, I still had Indiana Jones as one of the top films for the summer because he is such an iconic character. He is Harrison Ford, who we all love and adore, and this being his number one character, with I think Han Solo being number two, and this being his last go around, and you have someone like James Mangold directing Dial of Destiny, whether the movie is a success or not, because we're hearing mixed things, people are going to want to come out and see Harrison Ford's last go as Indy, especially compared to how the last time went, which I'll have my views on Crystal Skull when we get to it. But everyone knows Indiana Jones. Whether you've seen the movies or not, everyone knows Indiana Jones. He's iconic, and he's iconic for a reason. But he's not as high up there on the list for me as he is to you, but that's because you grew up with him. Yeah. He was brought onto me by my dad, much like with the Star Wars films. I love the OG trilogy, but I am also, because of my age, I'm more open to the prequels and to the new and the sequels and the shows than I am the OG franchises, because I didn't grow up watching the OG franchises to death, which I mean, even then I did because I had VHS, but I didn't have them as a brand new thing for me. I watched them 1,000 times at home before I got to see them on the big screen. You guys got to see them on the big screen, so you had that first time connection, like I did with Jurassic Park, and why it's so important to me. Whereas with other people, like, dude, Sean, it's Jurassic Park, calm down. It's like, no, that's how you guys are with the OG trilogy and Indy and stuff like that. So I get where you guys are coming from in terms of that, because we all have our things that hook us and connect us.
And this is one of those franchises also, it is great big screen entertainment, because it's obviously I saw them all first run on big screen, and obviously 1,000 times on VHS and Laserdisc and DVD and Blu-ray and digital. Yes, I own them all. But then in the years since then, obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark pops up every once in a while, especially as in the last couple of years it's become kind of trying to do little revival screening kind of things, even at the chains like AMC and things like that. So Raiders of the Lost Ark has popped up a few times. I've gotten to see it back on the big screen. But the other ones like Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, I only got to see them one other time on the big screen, and that was they did a marathon before Crystal Skull came out. And it was just so fun to see this on the big screen and to have a crowd full of people just cheering and stuff. It's this is the kind of movie it's blockbuster entertainment, and it's made for people to just go and have fun, and you can laugh and be thrilled and all that kind of things. That's one of the things I think is underestimated in the Indiana Jones franchise, is the comedy, because I mean he's not laying out one-liners like it's some kind of he's some kind of comedic character, but he has these lines that just they come natural. They don't seem forced at all, but it's just he says something just the right way he says it, just the funniest comebacks and the funniest commentaries and things like that.
And his physical comedy of it, which, like I said, they're not even
physical comedy too. Yeah,
they're not even outright slapsticky. It's something that happens, and then his face sells it all. Just something randomly happens, and it's not even meant to be funny. It's just oh shit, but Harrison's face makes it go, that's actually funny. And it's and I don't think it was ever even the intent. It was just how well Harrison played into the scenes and played into the moments that made them memorable in a way.
So you get the whole origins of this thing. Basically, George Lucas has always wanted to make this character, this throwback to the old serials, things like that. He enlisted the help of his friend Steven Spielberg, and they decided to work together on this, because Steven Spielberg had always wanted to make essentially a James Bond movie. But he's I don't know if I want to do James Bond, because it's it's not my kind of thing. I don't know if I'd be right for it. But he wanted to do James Bond. So instead, George Lucas well, I got another character. If you want to do a adventure character, I got somebody for you. And they hooked up to do this. Famously, Tom Selleck was supposed to play. They wanted Tom Selleck to play Indiana Jones. There's even on some of the DVDs and stuff, you can see screen tests of him and Sean Young as Marion doing the screen test for this thing. But
surprised Sean Young didn't stay on with Harrison Ford because of Blade Runner.
But this is before Blade Runner. It's a year before Blade Runner.
Oh, okay.
But Sean Young was never cast. This is, I think, her screen test. I think Tom Selleck was. They knew they wanted him. She was just kind of screen testing for it. But Tom Selleck, famously, CBS would not let him out of his contract because he was doing Magnum PI at the time. And so, no, we need to film this during this certain window, because George is obviously doing, his next Star Wars movie. He's going to be working on things like that. And so they had to pass him up, and they ended up using Harrison Ford, and they created one of the best characters of all time. So let's get into Raiders then. Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't know how you want to do this. What are your overall thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Now for me, Raiders is the one outside of just recently going back and rewatching all of these. Raiders and probably Crystal Skull are the two that I've seen most recently before this week. Temple of Doom, I had not seen in 15 years, and Crusade probably around the same time, probably because I went back and watched them all together. But Raiders is always on in some form or fashion, and Crystal Skull, I think I watched it because we watched it for the show. So now Raiders to me was the one that I was like, oh, I remember everything about Raiders. And it was going back and rewatching Temple of Doom and Crusade, where I was like, I can't remember if I remember everything, because like I feel like I was a teenager the last time I watched these two, or maybe early 20s. But with Raiders, I mean, Raiders is the iconic one. Now, as a kid, Temple of Doom was my favorite one, because that's the one that, at least for me, that I remembered and always watched over and over and over. Kalima, that's what I knew. It wasn't Raiders. But now, older me, yes, it's Raiders. But yeah, I mean, how do you not? Is there not? I'm sure there is, but in terms of just even rewatching this the other day, excuse me, I was like, has there ever been such an iconic opening introduction to a character as what we got in Raiders? I mean, you open the movie up, you got all these people going through the jungle, there's booby traps, there's stuff, all this happening. These idiots are just bumbling over shit, and then you have
one of those idiots being Alfred Molina, by the way.
Yes, what's his name again?
He is Satipo or Sapito, because it's spelled one way in the credits, but Harrison Ford says it, Indiana Jones says it a different way.
So it's Han and Han, basically.
Yeah.
It's a Han moment. It's Han. It's never Han.
Satipo is the name, but in the movie he says adios Sapito. He messes it up.
Yeah, but I mean, in Alfred, even though I know it's Alfred Molina, it still throws me off because I never have seen him look like that in anything.
Well, and plus it's like he was in this, and then I mean he was still a working actor for the longest time, but the first time I actually like even really noticed Alfred Molina was probably like Species or something like that in like 95,
or like Boogie Nights.
Yeah, that was like 98. So yeah, it's like and it wasn't until that point you go back and like, oh, he was that guy in Raiders? I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, because
he was nobody then.
It's like your brain is looking at like Uncanny Valley when you see him in this, just like that's not Alfred Molina. Is it? No, yes, no, what? It's like, yeah, no, it fucking is. We're just not used to seeing Alfred Molina young. He's one of those actors like, oh, he's always been old. Like Clint Eastwood. You never seen a young Clint Eastwood. He always looks like he's in his 40s or older. But yeah, and then we get this introduction to Indy, and he kind of comes out of the shadow. And it's like that big, just like momentum, like, here's the motherfucker. And yeah, like at this moment, like all the way through to the point where we get to the iconic scene with the ball, Indy is king shit. He's smarter than everybody. He knows everything that's going on. He's keeping people from dying to a point. He knows the booby traps. He knows what's happening. He constantly is saving Sapito's life every 5 seconds because he's about to fuck up. And like Indy is king shit at this point. You know, and we get the moment where the iconic moment where he, you know, moves the bag of sand and grabs the idol and stuff like that. And then we get, and it's once all that stuff happens, which we'll go back to that scene here in a moment because it's such an iconic scene. It's once he gets out of the cave and like, that's when we start to get the funny Indy, because you get all the what do you want to call them? The
Vito's?
Yeah. They're all chasing him. He's like, start the plane. And you like, you know, just like, and he's like, you get the whole like iconic, like, there's a snake on the plane.
That's my pet snake, Richie.
Yeah. Like that's, and then it's like, so you get this like epic badass, like, Harrison Ford is such I'm an action hero. To like running like 5 seconds. Like that is what's great about Indy, is that you get like this one side of him. Because with a bunch of people who are not like in the know of him, he's king shit. But then when he meets up with is it Belloc, he feels not less than, but there's someone who outsmarts him. And then it almost like takes all the
And apparently has a history about smarting him, or
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And
maybe
so
not through the
like,
most maybe through dubious means, but he ends up
but it's like it takes all that shine off of Indy, and then Indy starts becoming like, oh, so he's not king shit. He's still good, but he's not king shit. But you get to that iconic scene, and anyone who has watched any movies at all, we all know the rolling ball. We all that like you
that
can't,
and the Idol, and so many things have been spoofed 1,000 times. Yeah.
well, yeah, but it's just like even at your most generic base level movie watcher, whether you've seen all of Raiders or not, everyone has seen this scene.
Yeah.
It's shot beautifully. It looks fantastic. It's just the everything about that scene works so well. And that is Indiana Jones in a nutshell. Is in the chaos of everything that's happening, it flows. It makes sense. And that's the thing, is even with Indy, through all 4 movies, as much as you don't like to acknowledge the 4th one, even through the chaos of everything that's happening, Indy flows through it like water. Like, you could watch the whole world in a tornado. He's that calm in the middle. And even though he's in the chaos, everything just seems like motionless. It moves so brilliantly with Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. What did you want to start with the beginning of it for?
But no, I agree with that. Everything you just said about it. But it's like it's one of those movies where it's like I don't think there's a weak scene in the movie. I think that every scene is important. Every scene works. I think there's no fat on this movie at all.
I think there's a little fat, but even then, you need a little fat.
Like which areas? Just out of curiosity, which areas would you?
Probably when where did they go?
Family?
What?
The Sala's family? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that, and when he thinks Marion's dead, and we got like the whole like him at the bar mourning her with the monkey, and it's just you got kind of this lull, and then you get him with Belloc, and that scene.
Well, I think that's
not a bad scene.
I think that's an important scene because they're
it's
talking
not
about...
a bad scene, but you have all the kids saving them from basically being outnumbered, and you like that, like it's almost like 10 minutes of film, and you're just like, because even rewatching it now, I was like, look, trying not to look at other shit during that. So there is some fat in the movie. It's not bad fat. It's like it's fat that you find on a steak. It's not bad. It's still steak, but it is there is that 10 minutes right there, and there is little things here and there when they're at the site, like the dig sites, where it's like they could have cleaned it up a little bit. And rewatching it this time, there's a few scenes that they probably could have chipped a little off of, but I mean, it's still an iconic film. Do you
have a favorite scene in this movie? Well, I'll talk, because obviously the action set pieces are all great, but there's one of the scenes I really love isn't even an action scene. One of the scenes I love are after they've escaped with the ark and everything, and they're on the boat, and Marion's there trying to take care of him.
I was going to talk about the scene when we got to it, but I know.
I was going to go through chronologically the entire movie.
I love this scene.
Yeah, because she's trying to touch up on him. He's like, it hurts everywhere. Well, God damn it, anywhere doesn't it hurt? He's like, well, here.
It's such a boss.
This isn't too bad. Here. And then she does the mirror, and I just love the way Steven Spielberg did this when she flips the mirror and it hits him in the face. Yeah, and they cut to way outside the studio.
It's almost like the Goofy yell, and then you're like, oh, like I thought, because when the first time you saw it, I was like, well, because like the first time I saw that, I was like, did she just knock him out of the boat? Because the camera pulled out, like, well, no, because it's like, was he next to the window and it flipped and he fell out the window of the boat? Because that's the next shot is the outside. I was like, oh, I'm like, no, he just got hit and then this kind of thing.
Just the interaction between them, because I think that just shows, obviously the intimacy of the relationship, but also just the comedy that he can show, and his vulnerability, because it's like, yes, Indiana Jones goes through all this, but he's beat up as shit. He's not just this unstoppable force or anything.
Well, that's why I love the one line. It's in that same scene where she's like, well, you're definitely not as young as you used to be. He goes, it's not the age, it's the mileage.
It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. Yeah, I swear I use that line at least once a week talking to people.
It's like he is still young, because there's so many scenes in this movie where it's like he is super young in this movie, but even as like myself, it's like it's the mileage, man. It's like I tell people, it's like, yeah, I might look way younger than I am. I go, but internally, I'm probably like 68 years old with all the abuse my body has taken. But yeah, but that moment, like here, and my eye.
This isn't too bad.
Yeah, and then like here, like, dude, that's a ballsy move,
That's
man.
smooth.
Good job. And then of course she wants to hook up, and he falls asleep. Like, dude, Indy, come on, man, come on, man.
Well,
But no,
come on.
that's such a great scene. That's such a great scene. I mean, it in terms of a favorite scene, I mean, it's still got to be the intro because the intro is so damn good. It's so damn good, and like, there's so many great scenes in the movie, but without that intro, I don't know if Indy hits the same way. Yeah. What would be your favorite scene? Is it?
Well, that's my favorite one of the smaller scenes. Like you said, there's the action scenes are all great, and one of the other ones I love is honestly the for kind of a lot of the same reasons is the fight under the airplane. Because he's beating up the smaller mechanic guy, and then he's already going, and all of a sudden they send out the big guy who takes off his jacket and goes out there bare chested with his handlebar mustache.
I never noticed it until I watched like pretty much all four back to back. There's at least one scene in every movie where he's fighting a big motherfucker. Every single movie, he has to have a one-on-one fight with a big dog.
And it was meant to be the same guy. The same person plays that mechanic, the ball mechanic, as plays the head thuggy guard who he's fighting with in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. Same actor. He was supposed to be in the third movie, but apparently he was already getting kind of ill by then. He is in the movie, like he's one of like the Nazis you see coming up to the blimp. But apparently they were going to do a fight scene with the character, but he couldn't, just physically he wasn't.
I didn't know this.
And then the fourth movie, obviously I think he passed away.
Yeah, the fourth movie, it's
and so they had the other guy play the big Russian guy.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think they wanted it to be, at least for the first three movies they were playing, they were supposed to be the same guy all three roles.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool though. That's cool. I did not know that.
I don't have it offhand. I want to say it's Vic Armstrong or something like that. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I love him. But there's the moment because he comes out and he fights him, and he's like, okay, let's do this, and he just gets his butt kicked. I love the way he's one time he's like, you see the shot of him just falling down on his butt, and then of course the propeller coming and chopping him to pieces. When I was a kid, that was probably the most memorable thing, one of the most memorable things in that movie, because I mean I'm a little kid, I never seen like this, gross things like that happen, and they didn't even show anything. They showed some blood splattering us all.
Yeah,
but it's like, whoa, I can't believe they just did that kind of thing.
Yeah, So you're saying that's probably your
well, I don't know. It's like
the fist fight?
I asked this question of you, and then I realized I can't even answer this question because I mean, it's going to be the iconic moments with the rolling ball and things like that. And then what gets me about this movie is honestly the finale of it. I find is very interesting because Andy doesn't even beat anybody.
He never does though.
The power of God basically defeats
Temple of Doom is really the only one where he straight up fights the bad guy and wins.
Mm-hmm.
In every other movie, it's happenstance to a point. Temple of Doom is the only one. That's why Temple of Doom feels like it's like a totally different movie compared to all the others. Is because it's the most. And we'll touch on that more in Temple of Doom. But that is the only one where he straight up fights the bad guy and wins at the end. Another iconic scene that I love, which I didn't appreciate it when I was younger because I don't know if I fully watched Raiders when I was younger, but I appreciate it more now. Is the moment where he's got the bazooka. At the Ark, and Belloq's like, he's like, give me the girl, and I won't blow it up, or I'll blow it up. And Belloq's like, do it,
blow it back to God.
Yeah. I know you're full of shit. Do it. And I love that. I love that the villain didn't cower or back down. You weren't waiting for someone to sneak behind Indy and pull a gun. It was more just like, bluff, do it. And then he's like,
because he knows Indy. He knows that Indy can't blow up this relic.
Exactly. Thing. Which is why I love that scene as a villain. I love that scene because that's him just going, dick on the table, man. Do it. If you do it, I'll be like, fuck, he totally did it. But it's like, you ain't gonna do it. Just do it. I love that scene. I think that's such a great scene. And then even watching Indy go, you know what? The badass person in me should do this. But I can't.
He also has to look at his face like, shit.
Yeah, it's like, fuck, you called me out of my bluff. Like, I love that scene. I love that scene. So in terms of, for me, the non-action sequence, it's probably that, because that's such a incredibly well-acted and dialogue. For George Lucas, whose dialogue is normally shit, that is such.
Well, here's one of the things is George Lucas This is back when George Lucas wouldn't write. I think the first Star Wars movie he did, but otherwise it's like he essentially came up with stories and storylines and maybe a certain line.
He was the idea plot man, but he didn't fuck with the dialogue.
But he handed it off to like screenwriters. Like this one's technically credited to George Lucas, who's I think largely most of the story. Philip Kaufman and Lawrence Kasdan. Lawrence Kasdan is kind of the main driving force behind the Indiana Jones.
Can you do Empire?
I want to say he helped out on Empire, but I'm not 100% certain on that, honestly.
But yeah, no,
I'm ashamed to say because I used to know all that stuff. But.
I love that scene. That scene's such a great.
Yeah, I mean, every scene in this movie you can pick apart as these iconic scenes. Like I completely forgot to mention the Well of Souls, where the snake pit is, and obviously.
You would think that would be mine because I love snakes, but then he fucking burns all the snakes, which that I don't like that. I don't like.
He burn them all.
He burned a good fucking chunk of them.
He burned the ones that were coming at him. He's mostly setting fires to try and keep them away and using fire to keep them at bay.
By lighting them on fire. No, but if I wasn't cool with Jaws being blown up, you think I'm cool with these snakes unrightfully being set aflame? No.
But it's another one of those things also. I think I want to say, because like the making of Star Wars, the movies, and the making of the Indiana Jones movies are the first like my exposure to filmmaking, because they'd have these TV specials like the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark or the stunts of Raiders of the Lost Ark and things like this, and watching them see how they did these things. Now they have those kind of things all over the place, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be bonus features on the DVD and Blu-ray, things like that. But this is the first time I got to see like how movies are made and how they do these things, and watching them do this Well of Souls thing where they had some fake snakes, just like rubber snakes around, but they had like import like thousands of real snakes, because like nowadays they would do that 90% in CG, obviously. Yeah. Especially the ones like in their faces, they'd be in CG, but here they weren't. I mean, you can even see now that we have like digital clarity, although I think they cleaned it up nowadays, but you could actually see the reflection of the snake in the plexiglass they had between him and like the one cobra that pops up.
Yeah. Because I was like, there's no way that cobra wouldn't have fucking attacked him.
Yeah. But I just love the way these films are made, and the fact that they make these big giant spectacles, and it was without the benefit of CG. It was all practical. There was no such thing as.
They still did. Granted, it's the 80s, so I'll let this one slide. But they still did the one thing that irks me about 9 times out of 10 when there's a snake on screen, is they always will make a rattle sound. It's like none of these snakes are rattlesnakes.
There could have been one in there. It just wasn't the one that popped up, though. Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, I hate that. It's like, you can just make a sound. You don't have to. None of these are rattlesnakes.
Well, the other thing is when they first looked down in there, and saw as like, asps, very dangerous. You go first. It's like, there's 50 different varieties of snakes down there. It's not just asps. And B, the ones we see are clearly not asps. But anyway,
a lot of them honestly were like garter snakes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of filler snakes in there.
Like when we go to the third one and he in the train and he falls into that one, I was like, those are garter snakes. Like those aren't anything super scary or bad. Because if it was anything bad, they would have bit the shit out of him when he fell in there. And like there's all like, this person's in our bed.
The one I can't believe. I was going to ask you who you think the MVP of the movie was besides Harrison Ford.
Besides Indy.
But honestly, before you I'll give you a moment to think about that, because I should have mentioned this just in our brief overview thoughts at the beginning, because this is all 4 movies. As important as Steven Spielberg, as important as George Lucas, as important as Harrison Ford is John Williams. John Williams' score for this. Amazing, iconic, and not even just the Indiana Jones theme, which it's one of those things that you say 4 notes, da 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 da, and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. They know the character. They can.
I will even give you one more. I was watching this, and I got a phone call, and I was talking to them while I was watching it, and they go, "Are you watching Indiana Jones?" And I was like, "Yeah." They go, "I heard the music. Which one are you watching?" And I was like, "The first one."
They can't tell from the music. Shame on that. No.
Well, I mean, it's the same song through like all 4 fucking.
There's the main theme, but that's what I was about to say. Is like, even besides the main theme, like everything from like Marion's theme to any of the other music, it's every single note of this score in all 4 scores is just pitch perfect. It's iconic. They're amazing. They they're very identifiable and they're very prominent, but none of them feel like overwhelming. It feels like it supports the movie, because sometimes like a movie, especially like superhero movies, will have like this theme that busts in and it's like overwhelming and it's like too much. But this one, even though it has a recognizable theme, all the music seems like it's in place and it's in service to the movie. And no one does it better than John Williams, because he, this and Star Wars and Superman and Close Encounters and E.T. and the list goes on and on and on and on. He is the greatest composer of all time. Now, do you have an answer for the MVP question? Or just your favorite character in this movie besides
Indy?
I'm going to go with Sala, John Rhys Davies.
I mean, the right answer probably is Sala, but I'm going to go Belloc. Because I like that his character... Because here's the even thing with Belloc. Because he's against Indy, he technically is a bad guy. But he just got hired by the Nazis. He's like Indy. He just wants to get the Ark because he wants to go out to the treasure just like Indy is. He's not necessarily wanting it for evil, and I mean, he is by the end of the movie because he's fully engulfed in it. But like, there are moments where you see like he just wants to do it because
he's just a competing archaeologist. Now is he willing to like double cross people and get his hands dirty and other things in order to get a hold of the stuff, things that Indy might not do? Yes.
Yeah,
but he's not a.
But I mean, I really enjoyed their back and forth, and like I said, his character. Every time he's on screen with Indy, I love those moments. And it's like that throughout the movies. Like at the very end, obviously he's fully embraced the evil of it all. But like, because like I'm not the craziest fan of Karen Allen's acting in these movies. She's better than someone else I'm going to talk about, but she's fine. I wouldn't call her the MVP. And Sala,
the character I like. The character is like a strong female character. Like she very easily could have been the damsel in distress, which for parts of the movie she is.
Yeah.
But honestly, when he first meets her in the bar, that's another one of my favorite scenes. I can't believe I didn't mention that.
She's great in that scene. It's kind of after she gets captured, she just kind of, even though she's a strong female, she does do the damsel in distress. She's not good at playing damsel. She really isn't.
Yeah.
She's not good at it. Karen Allen, not Marion. But in Sala, I just feel like if he was in more at the end, which I mean I know he's not, but if he was a part of the adventure at the end of the movie, I probably would have said Sala. But because he kind of he's at the boat, bye, and we don't see him, I was like, oh, okay. So I'm probably gonna go Belloc. Belloc's probably my MVP outside of Indy.
There's no wrong answer to this question, by the way.
Yeah.
For this movie.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say on the first movie before we move on?
I was worried going back and rewatching it how it would look, but especially the Ark scene. Because I watched it on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
The ghosts look great. Everything about the Ark scene still looked fantastic. Just the melting faces looked great. The ghosts that shot around, the lightning strike that went through all the Nazis looked great. This is one of those movies that they digitized beautifully. It looks all of them look great in terms of them upgrading throughout the years. But yeah, no, it looks great, and it's an iconic film. And here's the funny thing. If you had asked me last year, well, which one's your favorite Indiana Jones movie? I would have said Raiders. As a kid, I would have said Temple of Doom because I didn't know any better. Last year, I would have said Raiders. Rewatching this, it's not Raiders. Raiders is number 2. It's by a small fucking margin.
But my answer for both Star Wars and Indiana Jones when I was a kid was always whichever one I've watched most recently. Because it's like I'll watch Raiders like, no, this is my favorite. And then I'll watch Temple of Doom like, no, this is my favorite. And then I watch Last Crusade and like, oh, this is my favorite. And it's
Last Crusade's my favorite one.
Yeah.
It's 1,000% my favorite one.
Yeah, I kind of got that from you.
I think to me, it's the most well put together. I think character-wise, I think action-wise. Does it have the iconic scenes that Raiders has? No. But I think the movie as a whole, I think Last Crusade's the best put-together film out of all of them. But like I said, we're talking about like an 88% to an 87% score. Like we're talking about like that.
87. Oh.
I just threw out a random number. Like we're talking about like maybe like 2% difference between Raiders and Crusade. They're both 4.5-star films for me. But yeah. But no, I don't have anything else for Raiders. I think we're good on Raiders.
So
Now,
then
Temple of Doom,
3 years later, we get Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now this comes out, instead of being a year after Empire, this is a year after Return of the Jedi. So as a kid, I'm loving this. Get, basically every year pretty much I'm getting an iconic film out of these people. This one, a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Technically, it takes place.
I didn't know that, because the whole question was like, well, where the fuck's Marion?
Well, that's I think why they did it is because it's like they wanted to make this movie. They wanted to make it a separate adventure with a separate girl, but they're like, well, then we're just saying that he broke up with Marion. Does that really kind of work?
But I mean, but Crystal Skull, he did.
Right. Well, you learn it down the line, but at the time they made this movie, they're like, well, we don't want it to be like, this happy ending wasn't actually a happy ending. So they said, we'll make it a prequel, because they were just essentially self-standing adventures. There's really no overarching plot to connect this franchise like most franchises try to have.
But by making this a prequel, it does make you wonder, where the fuck's Short Round then the rest of the way?
Well, maybe let him go off and have
someone who would have left Indy.
Well, yeah, but he was also, he was with Indy on his adventure, whatever, while he was in China. But it's like he only ended up going to India, like that was essentially accidental. It's like, I don't think he was ever meant to be like his companion for life or anything.
I don't know, but it made it seem like like when he tries to explain, how he met Short Round, he's like, oh, he was, an orphan and stuff, and I kind of took him in.
Yeah, he really wants some adventures, but it's like at some point the kid's got to go live his own life. So I don't know.
I don't know.
Before we get into that,
do they ever? What's the year? What's the years on this? I don't even know if they ever break down the years between Temple and.
Yeah, because at the very beginning of the movies, it shows the year. I want to say one's 38 and this is 37, I believe.
So in a year, Short Round decides, peace, I'm gone.
For whatever reason, yeah. So we get Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. Largely considered the darkest of the movies, and it is. It's a darker movie.
To a point.
If you believe, assuming you believe everything that they've said, and like the making of materials, things like that, is that George Lucas was in a much darker place. He had just gotten divorced, so he was feeling darker, and he wrote this darker tone movie. It wasn't quite as hopeful. Steven Spielberg, however, though, is even able to make this quite palatable. Like you have included Short Round, Ke Huy Quan, who, I'm sorry, Oscar winner.
Yes.
Ke Huy Quan.
Put some respect on the guy's name.
Which I never thought I'd be saying those words. That's kind of weird. Because you saw him in that, and you saw him in the Goonies, like a year later, and then you pretty much thought that was. He popped up in like a tiny roles in like Encino Man and things like that. But to see him come back like now is just awesome. Love to see it.
And I love every time he finds Harrison Ford, because like I think it was like during the premiere, like Harrison Ford was like doing an interview, and Ke Huy Quan showed up and he like snuck up behind him, and like they're like, and Harrison Ford's like, what the fuck? Oh, hey. It's just like, I love that they still have that relationship.
Yeah, it is great. But but he introduces this child character in there, and you're putting this kid in a lot of danger throughout the movie, but it's still it's okay, because it's like Steven Spielberg can handle kids in danger in such a way that it doesn't feel exploitative. It feels like these kids are just part of the adventure. And I think that's why people, because like nowadays you put a kid in danger and we're like, oh my gosh, you can't do that. Why is somebody pointing a gun at a kid? It's like, because it's what would happen in this situation.
Because it's the fucking 1930s and fuck them kids.
Right. So this comes out. It's definitely a darker tone. They take him the opening scene in China with Lao She. It's another one of those things. Literally, the first time I saw this movie, it starts out with a musical number. Okay, it starts out with anything goes in Chinese, for the most part. And I'm watching this, and I'm literally thinking, did we walk into the wrong theater? I'm like, what is going on right now?
This is what I'm going to say real quick, because you brought it up a little bit earlier. I was like, I'm going to wait till we get to this point. I feel like this first scene was Steven Spielberg going, I still want to make a James Bond movie. This is my James Bond scene. Because
he's dressed like some kind of James Bond and everything.
Because Indiana Jones in this first scene, he's James Bond. He's 1,000%. Even watching this, I'm like, this feels like they want him to be James Bond until they decide they want to make this an Indiana Jones movie. Because it does not feel like an indie film. It feels like a James Bond movie.
1,000%. I think it was they were making the next story for the Indiana Jones movie, and they said, let's make a James Bondish scene and shove that in there. But the only way you really could do that is to put it as like a prologue, or not prologue. You couldn't do it in the middle of the movie, obviously. Yeah. So I think it works perfectly, because, like I said, it starts out the musical number. I think I'm in the wrong theater. But then you see it's not. It's just he's at this show. And it's another one of those scenes where it's just like, the banter between him and Lao She and the whole kind of a chess game they're playing where they're turning like the thing where you're passing around the remains and the jewels and things like that. And but then once things kick into gear and you get the whole the frantic chaotic scene where everybody's running around and he's trying to get the antidote and she's trying to get the diamond and crawling around the floor. It's another one of those scenes that just shows Indiana Jones kind of slapsticky, but never crosses that line. It always still works for the character, and it's just a lot of fun. What are your thoughts on that opening?
On the opening?
Yes.
Like I said, as a kid, this was the movie that I watched all the time and loved. Because I was a kid. I didn't fucking know any better. Plus, it had Short Round in it. I'm talking about the movie as a whole at this point.
Yeah.
Watching this today, I can't stand this fucking opening. And a lot of that is because I despise is it Kate Capshaw? I despise Kate Capshaw in this film. She's worse, but she's the equivalent to the reason why I can't fully love Batman 89 because Kim Basinger just screams through that whole fucking film. Kate Capshaw is fucking the worst thing to ever happen to the Indiana Jones franchise. And yes, I'm including Crystal Skull. She's atrocious in this fucking film. She's unlikable. And even watching this the other day, I don't buy that Indiana Jones would ever want to be with someone like her, except for I'm horny and she's a blonde. Because it's one of those things where it's like they're forcing these two to it's like taking two bars and go, kiss, you guys are married. It's like, no, there's never been a point in this movie where I buy that Indy would put up with her or like her, except for she is an attractive blonde and she's the only fucking one here. So, okay.
Well, I think Indiana Jones has always been, he kind of seemed like a ladies' man, and he was just picking up on the hot chick. Now, for me, I don't mind King Capshaw. I mean, can I see her being shrill and annoying? Absolutely. But that's because that's the character she was playing. She was supposed to be a shrill, annoying character who him and Short Round just like, oh my gosh, I can only take so much of this.
But here's the thing: why would you even write a character like that? And it almost makes me feel that they didn't fully believe in this film as much as they did with Raiders, and that they were trying to do other things because this movie does feel more slapsticky than Raiders. It feels like it's more that's why Temple is such a weird film, because it is the darkest one in terms of if its graphic nature and what it does and what it shows, but it also feels like it's intentionally trying to be gross out in a way for the time. By today's standards, it's nothing. But
yeah, because you have the whole meal scene, and then you have of course the tearing out the heart. Which I remember after I first saw this movie, my dad took me to see this movie. Me and my siblings, we went to see this movie. And because it's a sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, we have to see it. It's Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he sat us all down in the living room and wanted to talk to us and make sure we were okay, because there's a lot of scary stuff in there. And then with the pulled out the heart, if it was too gross for you, and we're good, Dad. That's our favorite parts. We love this movie.
Well, I mean, it's like you got the heart thing. You've got the bugs where she's having to try to put her hand in, and they're all over her and shit. You have the moment where the dinner scene where they cut the snake and more fucking
snake surprise
come out of it and shit, and it's like, you guys are really trying your best to gross everybody out in this movie, and then you have the slapstickiness of it, and it's just it's like you're trying to be darker and grosser, but then I feel like you're trying to be slapsticky so it's still okay for children by having Short Round in it and having these stupid antics. This movie, tone is all over the place. And it's it can't tell what it wants to be. Does it want to be for kids? Does it want to be for adults? Let's just throw it in a fucking blender and let's see what happens. What I will say, and this is me talking about the whole film as a whole, I dislike the first half of this film. It isn't until I know this isn't his name, but Kali Mal shows up. What the fuck? What's that?
Molaram.
It isn't until he shows up that I think the movie actually starts to get good. So when it basically enters the halfway point of the film and they start to go into the dungeon and stuff like that, that's to me where I'm watching. Because I remember watching this the other day, I was like, oh my god, I thought I liked this movie, but I fucking can't stand this film. And then you get to the part where I think it's right where Indy gets attacked in the bedroom. From then on, it's like, okay, this movie actually turned, and I'm actually enjoying myself again with this. But that first hour, I can't stand the first hour of this film. I really can't. It's obnoxious. It's annoying as fuck. I don't know how many times I would have left Kate. I would have left her in the village. I wouldn't have brought her ass with me. Like, why? What purpose was it to bring her with you? She's just an annoying, like, tag along.
Well, so he said we're allowing you to tag along.
She doesn't bring anything of substance to this movie, except to basically be more annoying than Short Round, which I don't find Short Round annoying. I love Short Round. One of my favorite scenes. We'll talk about favorite scenes. One of my favorite scenes or moments of this film, quiet, not action scenes, is when him and Indy are playing cards. And he's like, you cheated, you no fun. Because I'm loving Harrison Ford trying not to break. Because he's like, I'm not cheating. You're like, I love their interaction. Like watching that interaction goes like that. Like they
had a great chemistry together.
Like this is why I know that that's why they're so close now at an older age. That I love that scene. And then he pulls out the car. He's like Georgie's like, oh shit, you caught me. That is probably my favorite non-action scene in this movie is that little like pocket moment there. But it's once again, it's you almost want to mute her because she's just running around screaming. Why would you scream at an owl? It's a fucking owl, you dumb bitch. It's not doing anything. Like it's just because like you're having this great moment between them, and then it pans over to her screaming like a fucking idiot around the forest and shit. And it's just, I can't. I fucking hate her so much in this movie.
I don't know. She never bought, and I know you're not in the. I'm in the minority. I know a lot of people do not like her, and a lot of people do not like this film, which I've never understood quite that. I mean, if you don't like her, that's one thing. But honestly, this movie is like just below Raiders for me. I really enjoy this movie a lot, and a lot of that has to do, of course, with the action set pieces, which throughout the movie are great. John Williams has another great score. He adds more new themes onto it for this movie, especially like the slave, the mining theme, which that plays throughout the movie. It's another one of those identifiable ones which I recognize so much. But yeah, and as far as the rest of the supporting cast, like you already talked about Mola Ram. I think for me, Short Round is probably the MVP besides Harrison Ford.
He's absolutely the MVP.
But Mola Ram is such a great villain. He has this voice, this commanding voice.
I do wish he had one more like legitimate scene where like maybe he had a conversation with Indy or something. I do wish he had one more actual just like conversation scene in this movie.
Yeah. What's funny is I saw just recently. I think I've seen bits and pieces of it over the years, but I watched for the first time Gandhi, the movie, which came out I think the year, the same year, 82, the same year as ET. So Gandhi came out, and he has a role in that movie, and I like wasn't even like the screen. I heard him start talking. I'm like, that's Mola Ram, and sure enough, it was the same actor. And I was like, he just has this identifiable deep voice accent to him. So he was a lot of fun. Any other scenes in particular you wanted to go into, or?
We were just kind of talking about the beginning, and then I just went on a whole fucking rant. Okay. But I mean, like I said, the stage pieces, like as much as I hate the opening when the chaos happens, I love the chaos part. Like I love how he hits the big fucking the gong, and they're shooting the gong, and you can see the gong, like the bullet holes hitting the gong, and like it denting. Like I love that. I like as much as if you can mute her, it'd be great. But like when the planes crash in, and they use the raft to kind of as like their parachute. Like I loved how that was shot. I love the aesthetic of that. Creepy bugs aside, I do like how the spike trap thing works, but like this is the part where the slapstick thing comes in because it's at one part where Harrison Ford sticks his head through and goes, "We're about to die."
That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Is that one?
To me, I almost felt like he was Steve Martin in that moment. That was a very Steve Martin-esque kind of scene.
That might be my favorite shot of this movie, honestly.
That is such a Steve Martin like facial reaction to it.
When he reached out, going, "The other one, the other right, your other right."
Yes. No, that part was fine, but it was more like "God, I'm about to die." But no, like I love the if we're thinking about like iconic moments of this movie, obviously the bridge. The bridge is iconic for what it is. I love the rail cart scene. I mean, that's the fucking ride at Universal is the rail cart scene. That scene's fucking awesome. Like, everything about that scene is great. That's such a great action set piece to the point that we got that in The Rock to a point.
So, I think this is the movie though where I think they almost started overstepping what they could achieve with special effects. Because I mean, at the time when especially as a kid, you don't even care notice things, but like some of the explosions you can tell are fake, and like in that minecart scene, you can kind of tell some are like models and dolls. At one point, like when Short Round's like hanging between the two carts, they go to one shot where his arms and legs look stretched out so far. You're like, wait, what is going on with this thing?
But yeah, I mean, like,
I love
the whole like. That was the first time I ever saw voodoo dolls. And I was like, that's a thing. Like when I was
first time you saw what?
Voodoo dolls.
Oh,
you know, when she like stabs Indy and he's like, oh. Like when as a kid I was like, you can do that. Like you can make a doll of a person and stab them and that hurts them. Like I don't know how many times I was like, I'm gonna do that to my older brothers. It didn't work, but I was like, but no, like there's a lot to like about this movie. But it's around this shroud of annoying. It's the first half, honestly. You take that first half out of this movie, Temple of Doom's actually a really good Indiana Jones adventure. Without Kate Capshaw, I would love this movie even more. Once they get into the dungeons and stuff, she tones down quite a bit. Why? Because she's barely in the movie as much. Because it's mostly Indy and Short Round, and then she's there, but it's at that point we're all up in the action. It's that first hour is just almost borderline unbearable to a point. But that last hour, I love so much. I love the first Kali Ma where like he takes the dude's heart and then his chest comes back together and they drop him in the thing and how you know he has to drink the blood and then he turns evil for that.
Yeah, and you were talking about the relationship with him and Short Round, especially that moment when you know he realizes that you know he'd hurt Short, like after Short Round brings him back, you know,
because he has to burn him, and
he's like, I'm sorry, kid. You just feel like I can't believe that I tried to hurt you, and you can feel like the pain and
like I love so much about this movie because it reminds me of when I was younger. But my God, Kate Capshaw just ruins this film for me. But when we get to the inevitable like end, the bridge sequence, I love that like that epicness of it where he knows because it's Indy. Indy is one of those guys that if I'm in a lose-lose situation, I'm taking everyone with me. You know, and that's that moment. It's like I'm coming from both ends. What can I do? I'm gonna chop the fucking bridge. And we're just gonna see what the fuck happens. Like, I love that Short Round figured it out. He's like, "You better hold on tight. Things are about to get like." I was like, yeah. I like it to hope for this Kate Capshaw dropped, but then you had the alligators at the bottom and stuff like that, and obviously, like as a kid, shiny stuff, the stones. They always were like important to me because they were super shiny inside the skull and all that kind of stuff. I love the ending of everything, and I did notice because I remember the special effects of when he falls to his doom looks so bad on DVD and Blu-ray, but on Disney Plus it doesn't look great, but they definitely made that look better. And I love that I love in terms of old 80s things how they just recrop the same like alligator scenes of it spinning around the one cloth. They're like, I'm fine with that. It's like they're alligators. What can you do?
It's one of the things, like I said, the effects, they didn't really take, especially when I watched it as a kid, they didn't take me out of it. And you kind of forgive it today because of the time, because it's like they were getting more ambitious with their effects, but they weren't quite there yet because it wasn't until like essentially Jurassic Park, or maybe talk about The Abyss in '89, where computer effects were like kind of something they could use. Yeah. So they're pushing the edge of practical effects as best they could. So.
But yeah, like I said, it's an uneven film for me. It's you're gonna be mad at me for saying this, but Kate Capshaw's performance is so bad that I actually put Crystal Skull above this.
Yeah, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed and I'm sad for you.
I didn't mind Crystal Skull as much this time watching it around. Like, if anything, I think it's because we built it down so badly that you watch it and I was like, you know what?
When I say
as bad as it used to be.
And when I say it does exist, there's only 3 films. Obviously, I'm being facetious. I'm just joking around, exaggerating.
But honestly, rewatching Crystal Skull this time,
but we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
But yeah. But anything you want to add for Temple of Doom?
I don't think so. By the way, Pat Roach is the name I was trying to remember. He's the guy who played the head thuggy guard, and he played the head mechanic. Yeah. So there's that. That's Temple of Doom. That's 84. So then we have to wait 5 years after that. I have to wait till I see Last Crusade. Now, did you see Last Crusade? No, you didn't see that in theaters either. Did you see any of it in theaters?
No, Last Crusade I saw in theaters.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It was the last, and that's why I remember it, because it's the last movie I ever saw at the drive-in.
Oh, that's right. You said that. Okay.
Yeah. So that's always going to be remembered for me. Like, I remember my first movie I ever saw when I was a kid in the theater was Oliver and Company. Whether I stayed awake for it or not, I have no idea. But I do remember that the last drive-in film I ever saw was Last Crusade. And I remember that
it was the first movie that my parents ever let me skip school to see, or get out of school early, because this is like before they did. Well, clearly didn't do like Thursday daytime or evening premieres. This is before they did Thursday like midnight premieres, because that wasn't really a thing until like kind of like
2000
Menace and something like that. And it was only for huge, like I said, Phantom Menace, like kind of exception. Like, we'll do 12:01 a.m. We're gonna have showtimes, things like that. But this is like just like the day it opened on whatever Friday. There'd be like the first show would be like noon or whatever, 3 o'clock, and I'm like, I want to see this movie so bad. It's Indiana Jones. And my mom's like, okay, fine. We'll get you out of school early. You and your brother, you can go see this movie. And so that's one thing I remember about this movie. Obviously, the big addition in this one is Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr. Again, Steven Spielberg wanted him for the role, obviously, because first of all, he always kind of wanted him to be, because he wanted to do a James Bond film. So that's one of the things that drew him to the whole making these movies in the first place. But also just because Sean Connery is such a cool actor. The weird thing is like such a small, I don't remember what it is, like 12 years or something, 9 years age difference between the two of them, that it kind of doesn't really work, but you get to overlook that. Obviously, it was totally believable in here, because obviously they played up one's age and played down the other one. You do have the return of Sala and John Rhys Davies. You have Alison Doody this time as the female love interest, who turns out to be villain, spoiler alert. Who we just saw recently in RRR, by the way.
Yeah, I was just like, RRR.
Unrecognizable, but it's her.
And she uses the whip.
Yeah. So yeah, in Last Crusade. Now, okay, so this is the first one you saw in theaters then, and the last drive-in movie.
I was 4.
Yeah, why don't you go first with your overall? Not at the time necessarily, because I don't remember, but your overall impression.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. I remember sitting in my car sitting in the car with my dad and my family watching it, but like, in terms of how I felt.
You don't remember age 4? Come on, dude.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, going back in and I always have, obviously, like, and I said this on was it Weekly Crusaders last week with Connery?
What did we watch for Connery?
I'm trying to remember now why we brought up Sean Connery last week.
Robin Hood,
that's right, because he pops up at the end of it. I was named after Sean Connery because my dad's a huge James Bond fan. So that's how I was named. That's why my name's spelled the right way and not the way that a lot of people spell it. Was because of Sean Connery. And so for me, like I said, at age 4, that was like, hey, Sean, this is who you're named after. So I was like, oh, cool. And he's Indiana Jones' dad? Sweet. My dad's like, oh, he's also James Bond. I don't care about that. But first things first. In terms of my favorite scene in the movie, it's the opening. I'm
torn on that one, but go ahead. You finish.
I love the opening of this film. I love young Indy. River Phoenix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I loved that. And I think I know why you don't like it, and I'll make a guess on it, but I want to get through this whole thing first. I didn't need the fat friend to be there. I thought that was, once again, George Lucas probably like, what's that, a fat friend, and have him blow the horn. Like, that felt like a very much George Lucas writing kind of thing. But I love that, when River Phoenix is talking to the fat friend, like, that belongs in museums. Like, I see Harrison Ford in this right here. Like, I buy that this is a young Harrison Ford. River Phoenix, to me, sold.
He's perfect casting for it. And actually, I believe he was Harrison Ford's idea, because Harrison Ford had worked with him as his son in a movie called The Mosquito Coast, 3 years earlier, I think it was. So I think he recommended him, and you cannot get more perfect casting than that.
Oh, it was
because you believe the looks, obviously, but just the facial expressions, the temperament, the way he talks to people, which actually I think is probably the reason the fat friend is in there, because you showed us he's this exasperation. He's like not putting up with his shit. He's like, stop that. We got to go do this thing.
And then you guys say it's just a snake, and it's like,
yeah, and so
like literally like not even like 15 minutes later.
So
like,
River Phoenix, perfect casting. But go on.
Yeah, but I love even at that young age, we saw Henry, we see him as who he's going to become. Like this is a benchmark moment of his life that he's going to remember this, and this is how he will become the rest of his life. I love the one thing I can't stand is the one guy, woo, like that. There's always got to be some annoying ass character in these movies. There's no reason for this guy to constantly woo the whole time. You're not Ric Flair. Shut the fuck up. But I loved the chase. I love that they like got on a circus train, and like it felt very much like a video game to a point where each stage was something different. You had the rhino, you had the snakes, you had all this kind of stuff. Granted that whatever snake granted based off the size, it's probably an anaconda, but that snake that was in the water, it wouldn't have just went back in the water. It would have fucking attacked Indy. And when they got around that box, that snake would have gotten out of that box. There's no way that snake would have stayed in that fucking water box. Let's be real here. But I loved everything about that. And then of course, you have the moment where he tries to talk to his dad, and his dad doesn't want to fucking listen. And so you're already building that dynamic between him and Connery for the older years. And you have that little benchmark of that guy in the white tux. He's like, I beat you, little kid. And then we immediately continue this story like however many years later, and it's still that guy, and it's still that one item. And I love that the connective tissue there. I have a feeling I know why you didn't like it, but I want to see if I want you to talk about the scene before I guess.
So River Phoenix, perfect casting. Love him as young Indy. Have no problem with the idea of a young Indy scene at the beginning of this. I especially love, like at the end, like the guy puts the hat on his head, he lowers it, and then he comes up and it's Harrison Ford. I love the transition to the current Harrison Ford while he's trying to get back to the Cross of Coronado. I think it's a little weird that he kind of modeled his look.
That's it. That's
not bothering me.
That's not it.
No, it's kind of weird. This random dude who beat him with the hat and the jacket says, "You know what? That's the look I'm going to go with for the next 50 years of my life or whatever."
That's why that was my mindset. Like that's why you don't like it.
The thing that kind of bothers me about the movie is the Star Wars story of it all. Is that they decided that they're going to explain everything happened to him in one day. They explain the scar on his chin. They explain his fear of snakes. It's like everything happens in this particular one scene that we're talking about.
But at the time in '89, when that was not a thing, did that really bother you, or does it just bother you now?
Well, no. I mean, even at the time, you're kind of like, so all these things about him just all happened to happen in this one day, and you're like, okay,
it's a benchmark moment of his life. It's what made him the man he is today, kind of.
Yeah, but I understand like the adventure and having lost this cross and things like this and becoming this archaeologist and stuff. That's one thing. Having it also happen to be the day where he, got his fear of snakes. That's another thing. Having it also be the day he happens to get a scar on his chin. I'm like, did this all?
Hat and everything.
Yeah,
it is heavy-handed, but at the time.
Yeah, and again, this is a nitpick thing. It doesn't make me dislike the scene. It just kind of makes me kind of roll my eyes.
Here's my thing. Had this same scene, exactly the way it's shot, if this was not in Last Crusade, and it started with the boat, him going with that, but they did this scene and they added it onto Dial of Destiny. Oh my God, everyone would hate that fucking scene. Because now it's because
nowadays, they hate it. Yeah,
because it's become such a cliche thing. Like, what the fuck? Why are you doing that? In '89, that was not
right. Because I called it the Solo Star Wars story of it all. Because Solo, they did like everything about Han Solo came to be during this one adventure of his in this few days of his life. And I really like Solo, honestly. It has its flaws, but I like it.
It's underrated. It's an underrated.
But that's one of the things that even I'm like, yeah, that was a little weird. But that aside, the opening. Great. I do like that you don't even see Sean Connery in that part. And again, this is another one of those movies that we've talked about this before, where it's like you don't see Sean Connery's face in that. You hear his voice when he says, when he tells him to stop and count to 10 or 20, whatever. In Greek. And then, but you don't see him. And then later on, like when they first meets him in the castle, it's almost like a surprise reveal, like Sean Connery. But obviously, people have seen
the
posters.
In the castle,
the advertising, the marketing, the trailer for it's like it's Sean Connery. It's like it would have been so cool if that's the first movie you're like, oh my god, but obviously that's not going to happen in the world of movies because you have to market things. So yeah, the opening was pretty cool. So then it does slow down for a little bit after that opening because they have to they go back to the school again. This is my problem with Last Crusade, and I love Last Crusade. Don't get me wrong, but the reason it does not rank, it's not my favorite or anything, is because so much of it feels like they felt like, oh, we went too dark or too off the rails with Temple of Doom, so we're gonna overcorrect and go back and basically gonna largely be copying Raiders of the Lost Ark. A lot of the same scenes are in there.
Though.
I think there's a lot of scenes that just kind of draw a parallel to it, and the tone to go back to the school again.
I feel like they do go back to it being a treasure hunt in a way, but I think that I don't at all think it's a carbon copy because.
Oh, I didn't say carbon copy. No.
Well, but I mean, it's doing its own thing. I mean, yes, it is the Nazis again, but that seems to, for the most part, always be the main villains for an Indiana Jones film is Nazis, because it's always in that time frame of the era. But I mean, I love, even though she ends up being bad. I mean, I liked Alison Doody as Elsa. I thought that was a good dynamic. She's not annoying. She's better actor than Karen Allen. As Marion and the other ones. I know it's sacrilege, but she is better actor.
Creepy as it is, I like the whole fact that she had clearly had been with his dad.
I was like, I like that too because I was like, I love that finally Indy actually has sex in the movie because it's in Marion's. Oh, they're gonna do it, and he falls asleep. Kate Capshaw, they're gonna do it. Nope, he gets attacked, and they're waiting, and it's will they, won't they, and they won't, and hope. Thank God, I hope. Of course, they probably did it by the end of the movie, but this one's like, is Indy actually gonna fuck? Yes, he is. He's actually gonna fuck. Good for you. Good for you. And not only did you fuck, but your dad fucked her first. Because I love it.
No, she talks in her sleep. Wait, what?
What? It's like I love that, and that's what. And see, that is why this movie is my favorite. Is because you've got, like I said, Alison Doody. Is Dottie or Doody?
Doody.
Okay. I think her dynamic works well because, yes, she is a Nazi. And here's the thing. It's like you have Indy throughout this film. It's like he cares about her to a point. He finds out she's a Nazi. And for him, right then, he's like, fuck you. Die. I don't care. But then he she explains herself. And it's actually a valid response. She's not bullshitting to a way. And, she's kind of like Belloc in a way, but not straight up evil. She's on that side because that side is surviving, and she's choosing to be on that side, and that side's getting to what she wants, which is the Holy Grail. Indy can only get her so far. They have the means to get further, and then when the time comes, she kind of sees it even at the end of the movie. She's like, shit, I fucking made the wrong choice, and I need to be with Indy. I need to side with Indy, and then it's her greed that effectively is the end for her. So like her character is not she's over here, but it's a likable over here as much as you can like a Nazi, but she's not even she doesn't even see like she's even a Nazi. She's like, I'm not, I'm with them, but I'm not them. And even Harrison Ford's like, you're with them, so you are one. Like straight up, all I got to do is squeeze. I love that line.
All I have to do is scream. Yeah.
Yes, it's such a. I like I said, their dynamic is so good. She's such a good actress, but then you add the Sean Connery of it all. Him and Harrison Ford are
perfect
so
chemistry.
Great. They're perfect together. I still, one of my favorite moments is when they're tied up, and he's like, take the match. He goes, oh, that's a clever idea. And then he drops it. He's like, the rug's on fire. The chair's on fire. And he's like, Dad, what? Dad, what? Because it's exactly a conversation that me and my dad would have. I love their dynamic. And then even like the one moment where Indy says Jesus Christ and Connery's like, that's blasphemy. it's everything about this movie. I love.
So you brought the diary? I should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
Yeah, it's like, why did you write? So I didn't have to remember. But now we got to do this. Like, it's such a frantic father-son thing. Because this is like that conversation is something I would have with my dad. It's no different when my dad asks, well, log into this. What's my password? Why would I know your password? It's your password. Well, it's probably one of these. It's not. Oh, then I don't know. How do you not know your password? Like, this is that dynamic is the same dynamic that I have with my dad, and that could be why I love this one even more. A, because it's Connery and it's Harrison, but I see me and my dad in this so much. And of course Salah's in it more. I also, what I like about this too, it's another thing with Temple that I like, is that they go back to things that worked in Raiders, and it doesn't work in this. Like in Temple of Doom, he's got the two guys with the swords, and he tries to go for the gun. He doesn't have a gun, so it doesn't work. And in Crusade, when he's trying to hard Marcus, and they try to do go through here, and then we'll put all the people here and distract, and they try to do that again, but the Nazis are smarter this time, and he actually puts them right on the fucking truck and drives off. Like, I love that they call back to shit that worked in Raiders. It ain't gonna work a second time. We're smarter this time. I like stuff like that, and the Holy Grail of it all, I think, actually is a fun, dynamic story, and I think the action, granted, it doesn't have the iconic scenes that like Raiders had, but I love the whole tank chase sequence and the whole fight that they have. I think it's shot well. I think the fighting is done better this time around. Not that it was done bad, but I mean, in Raiders it was punch, punch. I feel like the choreography of the fight sequences in Last Crusade, especially that one big scene, is done so well. How they use the tank's wheel as like a secondary like thing in the film. Then you have the moment where he gets hooked on the rock, and you're going that moment. Like, there's so many little scenes here and there that to me are memorable and are shot beautifully for this film. They might not be as iconic as Raiders, but to me, I feel like this movie is like they know what worked with Raiders, they know what worked with Temple of Doom and what didn't work with Temple of Doom, and I feel like that with Crusade, it's the perfect kind of like, we figured out the formula the right way this time, and they utilize it the right way, and having Connery with that is what works. And that's why I love Crusade more, is because it just feels like a more complete, perfect like situation compared to with the first two films. I went too long. This is your movie.
No. I mean, I mostly agree with you. It's like I said, it's always been, my 2 or 3. It's never been my number 1 favorite of the series, but all 3 of them are 5 stars in my opinion. I have them all ranked at that. Because I love them all. So the problems I have with this are nitpicky things like that. And it get towards the end of the movie, like there's the whole, the puzzles you have to solve to get to the Grail. It's like those can really only work once, because the next person comes along and you can see which parts of like the floor have fallen through and where you can go, and you have to.
Well, the second one only works. The second thing only works because Indy threw the sand on it. Like, that one could still fuck with you.
Yeah, well, that one's like
the bridge.
I'm like, I find it hard to believe that nobody's ever gone and you can't tell that there's something there. But I'm not going to get into the nitpicky things that. But I really do like the whole thing. That I like the fact the whole thing of with the rats in Venice. What you find out is because it's like my dad wouldn't have got past them because of the rats. He hates them. It's kind of like his fear of snakes. Which
and then he brings it up. And then he brings it up to his dad. He's like, rats. Yeah,
rats. Yeah. Things like that. But then one thing I love about this movie, and it's kind of been undone, the ending is the perfect ending to this movie. They literally ride off into the sunset. The one thing I don't like about the ending and kind of the whole movie in general is they turned Marcus Brody into a buffoon. He was not that at all in the first movie.
Marcus is the worst part of this movie.
Yeah, and I mean he's amusing at some points, especially in his interaction with Sean Connery, like when they're in the tank and things like that. Yeah. I mean, he still serves his purpose, but it's just like if this was a new character, I'd be fine with that. But it's like he wasn't this person in the first movie, and now he's like this buffoon who gets lost in his own museum and who's like just a klutz and an idiot. And like at the end of the movie, they have him running off, getting basically falling off the horse and stuff like that. And he's one of the things of my little nitpicks.
He almost fell.
He almost fell
off. But yeah, Marcus is the weak link of this movie.
It's the most perfect ending to a trilogy ever. I love the ending of this movie, but of course they went on past that. Did you have any more thoughts on Last Crusade you wanted to get to?
I love no, okay, answer this for me. So Holy Grail, you drink it, you're immortal. Was that only if they stayed in the cave? So as soon as they crossed the seal, he lost his immortality.
That seemed to be my understanding of it. It's one of those things like people always ask, like, "Hey, this doesn't make sense," but I think it's like once you cross that seal, it's like you have immortality
Which
there.
is why the knight was alive for as long as he did. But
yes.
But it's like, here's the thing, and it could just be that it's a loophole.
But the other knight who went off to take the other shield back to where he ended up underneath the library in Venice, he died because he was no longer immortal because he'd left. Yeah.
But wouldn't then Sean Connery's bullet wound, once they passed the threshold, wouldn't have that came back then?
Well, I think it does. It's not going to undo stuff. It's just
not going to undo the healing part, but it's not going to
he got healed. It's not going to go out in the moonshot. It's not going to mystically reappear. It's just if he gets shot again, that's not going to heal up again.
But I loved the whole, like, you know, you chose
poorly. I had a T-shirt that says.
But did you
wear it today?
It might be just me, but like when the guy, I can't remember what his name is, when he drinks it and he starts like aging, does he not look like Christopher Lloyd?
O'Donovan? Oh, yeah, totally looks like Christopher Lloyd.
It totally looks like Christopher Lloyd.
This is a year after he played. Well, it was after Back to the Future, is at least one of them. But and then right after Roger Rabbit too, we kind of had that
like when you get to the part where his hair goes all the way out to here, and then they go back to him and he's all wrinkled before he turns into a skull. I was like, that's just Christopher Lloyd. It's like, hey, like, yeah, she's screaming like murder.
It's like that stop motion and stuff where you can see the practical effect seams in it, but it's still for its time was super impressive.
The only part that bugs me, and it's not like a huge bug me, but it's one of the things is like Elsa dies because she can't not let go of it,
mm-hmm.
and then Indy falls, and then he's like, I can reach it, I can get it. I was like, dude, you just told her to leave it alone. And here's the thing, though, he almost touches it with his hand. He could have easily just like threw his legs up there and grabbed it with his legs, like his feet. He could have just like done that and like then brought his legs up.
Could he though, or trying to throw his legs up, would he have slipped loose and?
No. What I'm saying is he could have clasped it with his feet and then brought his knees up and then got it with his hand.
I'm saying if he tried to swing his feet up there to get it, it might have made him fall. It might have made lose.
If anything, if his hand could touch it like there, he probably could have put his legs up.
But I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be.
He probably could have put his legs up on there.
Once he's in the same situation she was, once he's so close, he's like, well, no, she couldn't reach it, but I can get it. I can succeed where she failed. But then at the same time, I wonder if it's also some kind of the not like a magical thing, but just like the draw of it. It's like, the power of the rails like makes you.
Which I love. It's his father calling him Indiana. That knocks him out of it because he never called him that. But I love that it's that moment that snaps him free. But I do think he probably could have propped his feet up on there and would have been fine. But it's a nitpick thing. It's like you're watching it, I was like, he could have been fine. But but no, like I agree. I think the ending of that is which is why I love that it's my last like drive-in movie, because like that's the last movie and like it ends like that. It's like that was the end of an era in terms of drive-in. I know there's drive-in movies still out there, but there's none near me. But I love that like that was the ending of a movie for me for my final like at a drive-in. Like I love.
My last drive-in was a double feature of Species and Braveheart.
Yikes!
They always showed two, the double features, but it wouldn't be like paired up.
I think it's a triple feature now.
It would just be like whatever two movies are playing right now. So I saw Species and Braveheart. Weird double.
My best friend's in Minnesota and they have drive-in, and I think they show 3 movies now.
Yeah, I have one like an hour from here. I think they only do 2 though, because 3 takes too long. But
yeah, because like I was like, did you see all 3 movies? He goes, no. He goes, we only saw like 2. I was like, which one do you choose to just not go see, man? Unless it's a movie you just have no interest in. But yeah, no, Last Crusade, I love that movie.
So that's that movie, I was like, I love it. Indiana Jones is done forever. They start the comic book movie series. No, I'm getting there. We think at the time.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because did you, and I didn't, but knowing you being the fan that you are, did you watch the Adventures of Young Indiana Jones?
That's what I was getting to.
Okay.
So Indiana Jones, as we know it, is over. There's comic books have been coming out. There's like novels, side stories like made up like extended universe kind of stuff for Indiana Jones, things like that. But Indiana Jones is done, right? Then they decide they're going to come out with the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, because George Lucas has always wanted to do this thing. He's like, he can basically it basically wants to be educational television, teach kids history.
Do you think without that introduction in Crusade that would have been inspired? Or do you think that they did that and it's like, you know what, that really fucking worked? Let's do a show.
I think it was a little of both. I think they're like, hey, this kind of worked, so we could do a show of this, because they obviously Harrison Ford is going to be part of an Indiana Jones TV show, because
He was though. He was though. He was.
Well, we'll get to that, but it's like movie stars didn't do TV at the time. This is not TV was definitely a lower tier of entertainment. So Harrison Ford wasn't going to do it. So they're going to make a TV show. River Phoenix wasn't even going to do this, but he died by this. Actually, he died while it was airing, so he wasn't dead yet. But they want to do Young Indiana Jones. And obviously, they want to do a much younger version. They had two different Indiana Jones. They had like a 8-year-old maybe, and then like a 16, 17-year-old, which is Sean Patrick Flannery. I watched it because Indiana Jones. I have to watch this, and I convinced myself this is great. I love this TV show. It's not good. It's really, really not good.
I think my dad has the series out there on DVD somewhere. Yeah. I never watched it though.
But it's not very good at all. I mean, it's fun watching it now because you see like people like Daniel Craig and people like that pop up, and it's like,
oh really?
Yeah, there's like random people in these episodes that you didn't realize were on it at the time. But like I said, it was basically kind of trying to be educational TV through the eyes of Indiana Jones, because he was like happened to be on an adventure that brought him to this famous character in history, and have to go on an adventure with this famous character in history, and it was like. And it wasn't very good. It was definitely not up to the movie standards. Then in 1993, on one episode, they decided to have is Indiana Jones and the Mystery of the Blues, where Harrison Ford, that is a big deal. Harrison Ford's going to be on this episode of a TV show as Indiana Jones. That's unheard of. So, but it's basically like a 3-minute, 5-minute thing at the beginning, and then like a little 2-minute thing at the end, basically bookending it. Is Harrison Ford's in this car chase. He's got a big bushy beard. It's just he's back as Indiana Jones though, so it's like it's awesome. And he ends up in this cabin where he finds like a little, I don't know, saxophone or clarinet, I don't remember which one. And he starts reminiscing about this journey from his past. It goes back into a plain old episode of Young Indiana Jones, and then at the end they come back to him for a couple minutes. So it's total publicity stunt, added nothing to the show, didn't make it any better, any more watchable. But it was still, we got to see Harrison Ford's Indy one last time because the movies are over. Then, there's video games and things in between, but we're not talking about that kind of stuff. Then then we hear they're going to make Indiana Jones 4, which, as it turns out, is titled Indiana Jones: The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which even the title at the time were like, that doesn't quite have the same ring to it as the other ones did, but okay, whatever. So Crystal Skull was like, it was Phantom Menace all over again, just in terms of anticipation, because it's like, you thought you were done, and then decades later it's like, no, we're getting another Indiana Jones movie. It was my most anticipated movie. It was going to be amazing. It was going to be awesome. Yeah, I know Phantom Menace disappointed on the years of anticipation for a new Star Wars movie, which honestly, when you think about it, Star Wars Return of the Jedi was 83 and Phantom Menace was 99. There's only 16 years in between there. Now that seems so short, but as a kid, that was eternity. That was a lifetime. Oh
yeah,
in between.
When you're a kid back then, when you don't have internet and you don't have all these like people talking about like, oh like, man, we got to do this and do this. We didn't think we were gonna get another Star Wars after past the trilogy. We got the special editions, and that was as good as we were gonna get because we got the books, but no one wants to read the books, and we ain't gonna do shows or anything like that. And Indiana Jones was one of the things. It was a perfect trilogy that ended, and we weren't. Harrison Ford's older now, and he does, he does the occasional like oh god, Jack Ryan movie and stuff like that, but he isn't gonna do Indy anymore. So yeah, like you didn't think, because this was what was it 2008 for Crystal Skull, and it was 89 for Crusades, so we had almost 19 years. I mean, yeah, no, none of us expected Indy to come back. But yeah, I agree. It was one of the things when you announced this coming, I was like, oh shit, seriously? Awesome.
So it's the biggest deal when they were making this movie, and then they announced, Marion was going to be back. Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then they're like, and Shia LaBeouf's going to be in it. And we're all like, they're not going to make him Indy's son, are they? And
I was prepared for that. I was like,
and it's another one of those kind of things where it's like, you knew it was, but they made it like a big reveal in the movie.
Well, because we all were thinking the same thing. I think everyone was thinking at that time is that like they're gonna start the franchise over, but he's gonna pass the torch off. Which I think everyone was like, just don't kill him. Don't kill Indy.
Well, no. Well, everybody I know is like, don't pass it on. It's like if you want to add on side characters, things like that, it's one thing. But to try to continue the series with like somebody else, it really wasn't going to work. And the thing is, if it did, I think it needed to be someone more like Indiana Jones. But of course, they introduced Shia LaBeouf as like this, Marlon Brando, 1960s kind of, yeah, it's like what they call a greaser, a biker guy, and it's like, I definitely can't see this character carrying on the franchise. He might be a fine character for this movie, but I definitely don't want to see, the Indiana Jones continue as this character. And at the time, and we've talked about, we liked Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, he wasn't bad in this movie. I don't mind him in this.
No, well, let me go into overall thoughts first of all. Indiana Jones Crystal Skull, huge disappointment. Do I hate the movie? No.
You like to pretend it doesn't exist?
I facetiously, it exists. I have to accept it exists. The problem for me is I think Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a good adventure movie. It is not a good Indiana Jones movie, and a large part of that is due to the fact that it doesn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie because it's in a different era. And both in filmmaking and in the setting of it, because it's like there's so much digital in this, whether it be backgrounds or actual, the ants or anything else that happened. It's like there's so much digital in this. It doesn't have the feel of the old movies. It doesn't feel like that practical, tactile nature of it. And it just feels like a more modern film. It doesn't feel like the other three. And on top of that, you have the adventures of most of them in this movie could be acceptable. But once you start introducing aliens and all this kind of stuff to it, and flying saucers, and the whole finale of the movie is like, this is not Indiana Jones. You've taken a guy who is like, this adventure serials, and you've thrown him into a sci-fi movie, and it just.
But I mean, you gotta. I'm not defending it to a point, but you got to think about it this way. The first one had to do with God. The third one had to do with Jesus. The second one had fucking voodoo. So why wouldn't it? The extraterrestrial thing doesn't seem that far out of because everything
people believe in religion stuff is very different from actually seeing flying saucers and you never see God.
But you have flying ghosts coming out of an ark and bolts of lightning coming out and electrocuting people. And in the first one. So, I mean, it does have supernatural elements in all four of the films. The problem with Crystal Skull, you could have still had it be aliens. I would have been okay with it still being aliens. It was the all 13 skeletons all merging and turning this alien into life, and then that being the flying saucer. You could have had them be the skeletons, and they're like, oh, shit, so aliens were there. And then you could have just done something different.
If you got alien remains, things like that, I was still on board. But once it turned into a full-out sci-fi spectacular, I'm just like, this does not.
Yeah, it was the all the skeletons morphing into a real life alien at that point, and then it leaving. That is the part where we're going, yeah, you guys did too much. You did too much there. Had you just had him be the remains, and obviously it has some supernatural elements to it with the skull and all that kind of stuff, you could have done something more practical, more believable for it. But once you did that, that was the shit, you guys fucked up. You fucked up at the end.
And then there's things throughout the movie like, well, first of all, everything. I don't blame Steven Spielberg for this movie. I don't blame
George Lucas 100%.
John Williams. That while there aren't as many memorable themes in this as there are in the other films, he does a great job as would be expected. Everything that's wrong in this movie is on George Lucas, because George Lucas has been trying to shove aliens and Area 51 and flying saucers into this since honestly before Last Crusade. He had these ideas he wanted to put in there, but Steven Spielberg kind of talked him out of it. But he's been ever since wanting to put it in there, and there were like 6 different stories they came up with, probably more than that even, between Last Crusade and Crystal Skull that they thought about making, and every single one of them Steven Spielberg would basically have a mandate to the writers, like it's got to have flying saucers in it. He had the whole idea of the nuking the fridge scene, how Indiana Jones is going to watch a nuclear explosion or else he's going to survive it in this fridge, things like that. And he had these ideas. He had the idea of the swinging monkeys. These are all things that came from George Lucas, and anything that I've ever heard people criticize about this movie is all things that George Lucas was like, no, I want this in there. And Steven Spielberg even said at the time, he's like, I was not a big fan of a lot of these things, but hey, Indiana Jones is George's thing. I'm just the director. And like, I wish he had said, no, it's our thing. We've been collaborating on this long. But he's like, fine, that's what you want. Fine, we'll do it. And he told his writers what they had to do. And he just made the movie. And I think they thought that just people will be like happy to have Indiana Jones back in another movie, which we were. But it's like, really, this is what you gave us? I'm like, I just think there's so many things in it that don't work. There are definitely things in it that do work. There are things about it I like, but it's just compared to the other three, it just seems like such a giant step down for me. And like I already said, is just as an adventure film, I think it is very enjoyable. It doesn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie.
See,
for
I don't
90% of it.
And here's the funny thing. Everything that you're saying, I don't disagree with at all. I agree. I don't think I think the monkeys thing is it cheesy, corny? Yes, but in that moment, Indy probably would have done the same thing. It's more. I think it's more or less if it was Indy that did it. I don't think.
Have you ever seen Indiana Jones swinging like a monkey through the trees?
Well, what are you if you were in that moment? What would you do? You would swing. You would swing. I think it's just more or less people were already on the negative of Shia. That once you threw that at, there's no way Shia was going to win this war. If it was Indy, it would have been weird. But Indy uses a whip. Indy does swing from things, so that would make more logical sense. But he's older, so you have to have Shia do it. But at that point in the movie, people were already seeing that Shia was trying to become the replacement thing, and there was no way Shia was going to get out of that scene without fucking taking the brunt. I think the ants. I thought that was actually a cool aesthetic. I think the ant thing actually was really well done. I don't think the ants is a bad thing at all. I actually like.
Well, they had to have something because they had the snakes and they had the bugs and they had the rats.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the actual snakes part when we're in quicksand. First off, that snake would have bit them, and you would have ripped that snake in two trying to pull Harrison Ford out of the fucking. There's no way that's and then you have where Harrison comes out and then Shia just picks up the snake and throws it, and it still does the rattle sound. First off. None of that shit would have happened. None of that would have happened. But everything that you said, the likes and dislikes of it, I agree 100% with everything that you said. But it was never it was frustrating, but it was never annoying. Whereas Temple of Doom was annoying. It was annoying for half the film because of Kate Capshaw. Crystal Skull, I agree. It's the least Indiana Jones of any Indiana Jones film. I don't disagree with that. I think that's 1,000% correct. The nuking the fridge thing, yes, that's at his age. Would if it was Raiders Indy or even Temple of Doom Indy because it's a prequel, maybe he would have survived that. But no, his body alone, it would
crush every bone in his body the way that thing
tumbled broken into pieces from that. So just the thought process of that. Honestly, even the scene where him and the guy are on the rocket,
sled,
his back probably would have or neck probably would have broken just by the sheer force of it. But it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But I love the car chase sequence where they're like running and you have the sword.
I wouldn't love that if it didn't look entirely filmed like blue screen. It looked so fake.
But once again, just like us allowing for the crappy CG special effects of the older films, that's the way it was shot back then in 2008. So it's like
but they should have shot it like
they should have, but it's one of those things where it's like if you're going to allow for the crappiness of the older ones, you got to allow for what it was at that time. You might not like it, but you're well, that's the way they did it, in 2008. I think Cate Blanchett was good in it. Ray Winstone was fine in it.
I thought he did a fine job. I didn't buy his character, like the constant,
Jonesy.
Double cross. He's a triple agent. Who's double crossing? He was like, why would he help him?
It made Indy look stupid. It made Indy stupid for thinking that he was back on. Or it's like because I'm watching. I was like, isn't he still isn't he still a bad guy? And I was like, yeah, he is. I was like, which makes Indy dumb. You can chalk it up to age. Who knows? And then the one character I didn't like was John Hurt.
Yeah.
John Hurt's character doesn't work for me the entire film.
It didn't work for me. I didn't really like the entire character. I didn't like that Indiana Jones and like, oh, he's auto writing, and he puts something in front of him and like.
And I love and how like as soon as he gives the skull back, he immediately is just back to normal, and he's like, glad to have you finally back with us. It's like that's not how that works. That's not how any of that works.
I like John Hurt as an actor, and if he had been a character, if he had been like this person who had been a mentor to Mutt, Shia LaBeouf's character and all this kind of thing, that's fine. But the fact they had him be like this, like, not comatose. What's the word I'm looking for? But he's so out of it and
brain
stuff.
Scrambled to a point.
Yeah, and I didn't like what they did with the character at all. It kind of seemed like they brought him along the adventure for kind of no reason. Then you get to the things like with Marion, which first of all she was always kind of just way too grinny and weird through most of this movie, and then especially when
she's like that. She's like that in Raiders too.
But especially when she's like driving the vehicle and she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna drive off this cliff, and the trees will help lower me down into the water." It's like, really?
Like, don't act like that was the plan.
Really? It's just like stuff like that. It was just so many little ridiculous moments like that. This made me kind of roll my eyes.
But see, here's my thing. Because, like I said, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I agree. These are all faults of the film. I can't defend any of that because I'm not going to. But the reason why I think you're so beloved of Temple is because of the nostalgia of it. And because you were younger and kind of like me when I was a kid, I loved Temple for what it was because I watched that one the most and all this kind of stuff. If Temple of Doom was made right when Crystal Skull came out, I feel like you would have felt the exact same way about Temple of Doom than the way you feel about Crystal Skull. Because the annoyance of Kate Capshaw would have grated on you way worse at an older age than you would have when you were a kid. The slapstickiness of
the characters, I bought her. I thought it was fine. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like the slapstickiness of it, you would if we would have had Raiders and just Last Crusade, just those two.
Mm-hmm.
And then we waited 16, 19 years and we got Temple of Doom. I think your mindset on Temple of Doom would be more alongside what Crystal Skull is than how it is now with Raiders and Last Crusade. If we got that movie,
I disagree completely.
2 years later, that is the Indiana Jones movie we got. I don't think you would have loved it as much. I think because it's in that
I disagree. I mean, it's hard to say because you'd also be dealing with a much older Harrison Ford, much older Indiana Jones who would be able to do a lot of the things.
No, I'm not even saying that. I'm saying the movie we got with Short Round, that age, everything. If you're telling me after Indy and Last Crusade, we got those two near perfect films.
Okay.
And then you waited 19 years and Temple of Doom is the movie you got after waiting 19 years to see another indie film. I don't think you would have liked it as much as you think you did. If that's the indie movie you waited 19 years to see, I don't think that's the movie you would.
Maybe slightly less, but I still would like it more than Last Crusade, probably.
I think they're both equally on the same length or wavelength for me. They're both 3-star movies. I think what works for them does work. The things that don't work for them are bad. They are bad. But the annoyance factor of Temple of Doom, I would rather watch Crystal Skull over the first hour of Temple of Doom, but I would watch the last hour of Temple of Doom over all of Crystal Skull. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So it's like that's why they're like right there for me. And if I had to choose which one I want to watch, and I have to watch the whole way through, I'm gonna pick Crystal Skull because at least I'm not like wanting to rip my hair out with Kate Capshaw for that first hour. And I'm not being like, you have gross moments in Crystal Skull, but it's not like trying to gross you out and stuff like that. And that's where my thought process is. But I honestly do think that if you waited 19 years after how Crusade ended and you got Temple of Doom, you would not love it the way you did. You wouldn't. I
disagree.
But the problem, but see, it's hard for you to think that way because like I said,
well, you can't. It's all what ifs. It
is what ifs. It is what ifs. And I'm not saying that you're, you thinking that Temple of Doom is a 5-star movie is wrong because it's not. It's a very special film for you. It's a special franchise. I understand that. It's no different than how I protect Lost World. A lot of people think Lost World shit. I think Lost World is actually a really great Jurassic Park film. I think it's people try to, much like Temple of Doom, you put it up against Raiders. It's like, well, no, Raiders is Raiders and Temple of Doom is not, and Jurassic Park's Jurassic Park and Lost World's not, but it's still a really great film. But I think it's the same thing with me with Jurassic Park with you and Indy. It's like that. It's in that pocket, and you can't convince me otherwise. It's just like I can't convince you otherwise.
And then maybe.
But yeah, but like Crystal Skull, I don't think is as bad now as it was in 2008. Each time I've watched, I think I've watched it twice since 2000.
Well, and part of that is the anticipation that when you come back after 20 years, people are like, it's the same thing happened with Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace is got lots of problems. It's got lots of problems.
It's still pretty bad.
But it's not the worst film ever made or anything like that.
No,
but it's like when you have 3 Star Wars movies and then you wait 16 years and you get that, you're like, really?
But here's the thing with Phantom Menace. We knew we were going to get more. We weren't getting more.
That's it. We thought this was one last outing for Indiana Jones. And like you said,
Phantom Menace, we knew we were going to get 2 more sequels.
Yeah.
After that.
And then there were the fears that, with Indiana Jones, like we think this is one last outing, and the fear was like, well, okay, well, clearly Harrison Ford's not going to do any more for this because he's too old for this shit. And this is 2008. This is what, 15 years ago.
15 years ago, yeah.
And they're like, oh, clearly he's not going to do another one. It's like, oh, they're going to try and carry it on with like, Shia LaBeouf, aren't they? And then even at the end of the movie, they kind of like play with that expectation because like the hat blows in, he starts to put it on, and he's like, nope,
not yet.
So they play with that. But then, and obviously, and then Shia LaBeouf goes on to completely trash, the movie and everything about it. So we know he's not coming back to the series.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they even bring his ass up in dialogue.
My understanding is he's not even mentioned.
Is he not? I know Marion's in the movie.
I know he's not in the movie. I don't think they mention him from what I've heard. I haven't gone into full reviews in that.
Well, no, neither have I. All I know
for sure he's not in movie at all, but I don't even think he's mentioned. But
I know Karen Allen is in the cast list. Now, whether or not that's like a photo like Sean Connery was in Crystal Skull, I had no idea. I don't know if she's dead or if she's still alive and he just goes off on an adventure. I have no idea. I just know Karen Allen is in the cast list for Dial of Destiny. I didn't see Shia anywhere on there. I do think, though, Shia is the one that took the brunt of the backlash for this.
Oh, I agree.
It wasn't, and none of this was Shia's fault. And I think that's probably why Shia did trash the movie, is because everyone did kind of turn on Shia. It's George Lucas's fault. It's not Spielberg's fault. It wasn't Harrison's fault.
Everything in this, George Lucas's fault. He played the character that was written for him.
Yeah, it's like this. Everyone just turned on Shia LaBeouf for this movie. And like he was already kind of getting backlash for Transformers after this and stuff like that. And it's like, none of this was Shia's fault. Shia is not bad in this film. Shia is playing his role. Shia is Shia. We love Shia. But he got fucked over hardcore from this film. And I feel bad for him because none of this he was fine in the movie. I do think that there's some scenes there that was missing because like at the very, very end when like they're like, we're just gonna sit here and wait. And then like he's like, nah, screw this, I'm leaving. And he's like, just stick around. And he's like, did you stick around, Dad? And we're like, oh, we about to unpack this, and nope, we're right at the wedding, and everything's happening. I'm like, wait, you can't just end it like that. Was he just joking, or was like, are we about to unpack some shit? Because like, and they're like, nope, we're at the end of the film. Bye bye. And it's like, but then there was the during the craze of Jurassic World and everything that Chris Pratt was going to become the new Indy, and everyone was like, ah. It was like, Chris Pratt wouldn't have been bad at it.
If let's say they were going to remake Raiders of the Lost Ark or continue on the series or whatever, of the people out there, Chris Pratt's probably one of the better picks. I still don't want to see it done.
Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need, because at that point they were like, let's put Chris Pratt in everything. Of the people out there, Chris Pratt probably is in the top 5 choices right now, in 2023, compared to like what was like 2016 or 17 when they were thinking about it. No, probably not.
Yeah, now I look at him, I think, well, maybe he might be a little too smiley, a little too dopey. But
Yeah, I was like, I'm sure that's what we probably should have done before this. Is we should have like if they were gonna redo the franchise, who would be a good indie now?
that'd be painful to even.
I know. That's why I didn't bring it because I was like, I don't want. Brian probably doesn't want to think about that. That'd be interesting now. Is like, who would be the 5 actors that you would pick today to play Indy? Pratt probably might still be on that list, but you know what? 90% of people probably go Ryan Reynolds. No, I love Ryan.
Well, he's definitely too jokey and
No, Ryan. No, like that's not Indiana Jones. As much as I love Ryan, you wouldn't do that.
So we get our one last Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah. So next week or this week, whenever I decide to drop this video, it'll be the week of Dial of Destiny. I know you're already hesitant because of certain feedback that this movie's had already. I am still very much feeling positive about this film, and a lot of that is because of the director. I love James Mangold. He's one of my favorite directors out there today. I don't think Harrison Ford comes back unless he felt that this movie was in the right hands. Mangold turned Wolverine into a different kind of character with Logan. Everything I've seen Mangold do, which granted there's probably about 2-3 movies I haven't seen of Mangold, I've loved everything he's done. Given him something like Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford back, with Mads Mikkelsen in this, because we both love Mads Mikkelsen. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I love her in some things, and I think she's overdone in other things like Solo. I honestly, hearing some of the negative stuff that's happened that the people are saying this week, I can't see that with this. I can't. But then again, could we see a bad movie with Spielberg at the time? No. But George Lucas doesn't have his hand in this, does he?
He's probably in there as like an executive producer just because
he doesn't have the same control.
No, he has no control over technically.
Exactly.
I mean, people might have gone to him saying, "Hey, what would you do with this character?" That kind of like an advisory position, but he has no control because he sold everything to Disney.
With him not having this like stranglehold over it, I can't see with Mangold at the helm, with Harrison and Mads and Phoebe and all them in this movie, and what's his name from Logan? Boyd
Holbrook.
Boyd Holbrook. I'm sorry. I don't see how this movie could be bad. It might not once again reach the expectations that people want it to be, but I can't see this movie being shit. I'm excited for it.
For me, it's been kind of a journey because like we got that one last Indiana Jones movie, which seriously disappointed me, and I'm like, you know what? It's fine, whatever. It's not like the other 3 don't exist. I can still watch those as many times as I want.
Yeah.
15 years later, Disney buys up Lucasfilm, and then one of the first things they announced, we're gonna do an Indiana Jones film, and we're like, really? Oh, okay, fine.
Are we remaking it? Oh no, it's gonna be Harrison Ford.
Well, that's just it. Is you're like, okay, they're gonna make one more, and because I think we all kind of have the same idea of like, well, that's good. You don't want to end on the note of Crystal Skull. Let's make another movie, make it go out on a better note, And now George Lucas doesn't have any control over it anymore, any active participation in the movie. So Steven Spielberg won't feel like he's like tied to George Lucas's wacky ideas, and so maybe we can get a movie to see what a pure Steven Spielberg Indiana Jones movie is. Gets delayed. Then they finally say, okay, we're making it, but you know what? Steven Spielberg's not going to direct it anymore. And that's the point at which I'm like, oh my God, what should we just can this project? I don't know if I want to see one that's not directed by Steven Spielberg. He's the whole reason I want to see this movie. And, but then they say the person they got to do it is James Mangold, who prior to Logan, I would have said he's just another director. That doesn't give me any more hope. It's like I've liked his movies, yes, but it doesn't mean anything to me in terms of what can he handle Indiana Jones. But to see what he did with Logan, and we took a character who we've known a certain way in movies, and he kind of made a completely different feeling movie than the other ones, with a character who is much older and more aged, and a different point of his life. And I'm like, well, that kind of is a direct correlation there in Indiana Jones. I can see how he might be a great director to make this work. The cast, it seems like there's a lot of people back. John Rhys Davies is back, probably for a scene or two, things like that. Antonio Banderas is in the movie. I really like him. I think he'd be a great addition to it. He also looks like he's probably only in a scene or two. like you, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I don't know much about her. She's fine as far as I know.
If you want to fall in love with her, and I don't know if you will, because based off the comedy of it, watch her show Fleabag.
Yeah, I haven't watched it.
It's like 6 episodes. The entire series is 6 episodes. You get through it in 3 hours, and it's her performance in that makes you go, yeah, okay, I love her. But
yeah. So I mean, the cast looks fine. The director is a good choice to it, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm still, I put it at my number one anticipated movie of the summer and of, I think, of the year too, on our show, because whether or not I think it's going to be my favorite movie of the year or anything like that, whatever I might think of the quality of it, it's definitely my most anticipated, both for good and bad reasons. Because I'm like, maybe we finally go out on that good note, on a great movie, instead of going out on Crystal Skull. We can wrap it up, and our last image won't be Crystal Skull. We can get a much better ending. There's that. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, you burned me once before. What if this one sucks too? And there's that feeling of it. And again, with kind of the modern filmmaking, with the where things clearly, even in the trailers, it looks a lot more, as digital. They didn't do as the practical effects, and it's not, kind of like the older movies that we're used to. It's like, I wish they could have done more filmmaking the old way, and it would have felt more like a real Indiana Jones movie. But those technical things being aside, I still have hopes for it. Now, like I said, we've heard kind of first reactions come out. I've avoided reading or watching any like full reviews of it.
yeah.
But just first reactions are very mixed. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say they hate it. I don't think I've heard anybody say they love it. I think most of them are saying it's fine, or it works in some ways and doesn't work in other ways. Like I said, it's very mixed. So I'm still going in hopeful, but I'm like, it's kind of a guarded, I'm not getting expectations too high because I've been hurt before, kind of thing.
You know what I love about this?
What's that?
Is the way you're talking about this whole episode and just right now. What's that?
Is that how you felt about Jurassic World?
This is exactly last year. Last year.
Oh, we saw how that turned out for you.
This is last year, 100%. This is exactly how I felt with Dominion, where it was like one of my most anticipated, but I was like, I just don't fuck me, man. Because Fallen Kingdom, you screwed me bad, man. You really, really screwed me. And we did the franchise flashback, and I was like,
Fallen Kingdom is a better movie than Crystal Skull.
What's that?
Fallen Kingdom is a better movie than Crystal Skull. Anyway, go ahead.
No. But I was like, I'm excited, but I'm terrified. Just go out on a good note. Just go out on a good note. And it did not work for me. And here's the funny thing. And I hope to God I'm wrong about this. Is I hope this doesn't turn out exactly how it did last year. Whereas the person who loves the franchise hated it. The person who liked the franchise but didn't love it as much liked the movie, understood its faults, but liked it. But liked it, while the person who loves the franchise hated the movie. Which right now, just where we're at right now, it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm positive. I'm going to like it. It's going to be good. It's got guys, and you're like, I don't know. And I feel like by the time
I think there's minimal, if any, chance of me hating it. I think there's almost no chance.
You said that about Crystal Skull.
Did I? You didn't know me then.
Well, when the first time I met you, you go, "There's only 3 Indiana Jones movies. There's no 4th one."
It's become a joke at this point.
No, but when we first met, you're like, "No, there's no 4th."
There's only 3 that I will go back and watch on a very regular basis.
But I love
not
that
hate Dial of Destiny. If anything, I might be disappointed by it. I might think it is, still not up to the par of the first 3, which I don't. I think
your threshold. I think your threshold is
Crystal Skull.
It just has to be better than Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
If it's better than Crystal Skull, you're fine.
Yeah, it's even if I don't love it, it's still a win. Yeah.
If it's equal to or less than Crystal Skull, then it's the worst thing in the world that could happen to you in terms of movies. All it has to do, which to you is a low bar, all it's got to do is just get over Crystal Skull, and you will be like, I didn't love it, but it's better than Crystal Skull, so I'm happy. And did it end Indy on a positive note? Which, even as much as you hate Crystal Skull, it did end with him happily ever after to a point, finally marrying Marion and kind of going off to the sunset, not the way that we wanted him to, like in Last Crusade, but he still kind of ended it in a good way. It was just the journey there was very, very bumpy. So it's one of those things where, does it end it in a way that you are satisfied? And is it better than Crystal Skull? If it does those two checks, it's not going to probably be a 5-star movie, but it's at least a 3.5 to maybe a 4. And I think that's the threshold you just have to get over. With me, Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Dominion, it was not that easy for me because it had to win me over Fallen Kingdom. It promised all this shit in the trailers, and then it didn't deliver that. And then you had the whole fucking locust shit of it all. And by the time it ended, it was just the same fucking film we'd already seen, many times before. Which for you, if it's the same movie we've seen many times before with Indy, you'll be happy. Because if it's anything like the first 3 and less like the 4th one, that's your bread and butter. You're going to be ecstatic for that shit. Here's my question for you, though. To end this as the final movie, would you be upset if Indy died at the end of this film? Or would you go, this I at least know means that it's officially over?
Well, I wouldn't say, I'm glad he's dead because it's officially over kind of thing. I wouldn't say that. But
does he have to Han Solo himself for you to be okay?
It wouldn't bother me if the movie ended and he's dead. I'd be like, it could be a fitting ending. Obviously, it depends on circumstances and things, but it could be a fitting ending to it. And it's like it's the kind of thing where I know that it's over anyway. If you had, if we thought there was a chance for more Indiana Jones films, if Harrison Ford was much younger and if things like that, then I'd be like, oh man, why'd they kill him off? Because I would like to see more. But it's like he's made it very clear, this is it. He is too old for this shit. Was
it this one or was it Crystal Skull that he broke his leg in a plane accident and they had to like postpone?
He's been in a couple plane accidents.
I know he has, but was it this one or Crystal Skull where he broke his leg?
It was before this one. It was back when they were starting to film this one, or they're starting to prepare to film this one.
I was like, so didn't they have to postpone it for like 6 to 8 months or some shit because of his injury?
Well, that was on Force Awakens. He broke his leg in a door and had to postpone. They just like filmed other stuff and came back to him later.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been in a couple plane accidents because he's a pilot. He crashes planes regularly, apparently. But so yeah, I mean, I hope it's good. I don't think it's going to do well financially. I think it's going to kind of flop.
I think it will. I think it'll be. Look, I mean,
because I think enough people were burned by the last one. I think that people now, especially older audiences, a lot of them are just like, don't want to go to theaters anymore. The young audience, that's the thing is, if I talk to, anyone in like their 20s and below, most of them are like either, why do I care about watching some geriatric dude run around? Or they're like, I don't see movies in theaters. I'll just watch the shit when it comes on Disney Plus.
And I'm gonna say the same shit that I said with the summer preview. Logan is the reason why people are going to go see this movie, because Mangold directed Logan and we saw what he did with an older character. Harrison Ford, doesn't matter how old you are, people know Star Wars, people know Indiana Jones. They might not love Indiana Jones nearly as much as Star Wars and Han Solo, but you will have your parents. If you're a kid and you grew up with your dad watching Indiana Jones movies, you're going to take your dad to see this movie. You will. And if it's good, then you'll have your friends go see the movie. I think this movie is going to have legs. I think this movie is going to do well. I think up until probably Mission Impossible comes out, because that's the next real big movie, I think. I think Indiana Jones is going to have a strong 2 weeks. I really, really do. It's going to do better than The Flash. It definitely is going to do better than Flash, I think.
Talk about low bars.
Yeah, well, but look at pre-summer, though. Pre-summer, didn't you have Flash higher than Indy? Didn't you have Flash as a top 5 film?
I'd have to go back and look at my numbers. But
I'd have to look at it too.
Honestly, I think that, well, that's just it. It's also the recent critical, things that have been coming out about this movie. I think it's like a lot of people are like, oh, well, maybe I'll just wait and see.
But hold on. Flash was greatest comic book movie ever. And that didn't do shit. That didn't do anything. So Yeah, I think like you can only take that word of the mouth crap for so many people. I'm actually pulling it up. You had Flash at number 4 for the summer,
Yes, that happened.
and you had Indy at 6. I had Flash at 7 and Indy at 4.
I think. Well, I think Indy makes more than Flash, but I think that Flash is out of the top 10 or at the bottom because it depends on how much money stuff makes. But
Yeah.
I think Indy it makes even less than I originally predicted. I don't think it'll be complete. Like no one's going to go see this movie, but I think that it's going to make a lot less than they expected.
Anything
Anyway.
else you want to add for?
No, that kind of leads in, and we'll talk about this after we see the movies. We're doing a whole Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny non-spoiler review and spoiler chat. That'll be coming up.
Basically, if you guys have been watching the channel, we've been doing this all summer, and instead of splitting it into 2 separate shows, we're just like, we're just going to do it as one whole long show.
Yeah, you can tune in and watch the non-spoiler section, and then if you've seen the movie, stick around and watch the spoiler chat on it.
Because definitely we will definitely
that'll be coming out probably like the Sunday or Monday after that.
Yeah, it depends on scheduling. So you and I aren't going to be able to shoot this until that weekend, and then it kind of just depends on available. Because let's put it this way, guys. This video is over 2 hours long. Editing wise is double that. So if it's a 2-hour long video, it means it takes about 4.5 hours to edit this thing. So it takes a while. For anyone who's never edited shows, it takes a while. So depending on how long the Dial of Destiny review is, and how long it takes me to actually review on top of working my job, that's how long it'll take for it to come out.
Sean needs to get his priorities straight and quit his job and stop his social life and just work on this. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, Brian doesn't edit shit. So
I've offered to edit shit, by the way.
But you haven't, though. Anyway.
Told me not to. Anyway, move on. We're done.
But yeah, we on the channel right now. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, hit that like, share, subscribe button. Follow us on the social media outlets you see below. Franchise flashback. I'm trying to think of what other franchise next we would do. Probably the next one would be Mission Impossible. But we're not going to do that probably until Dead Reckoning Part 2.
Yeah, I'll probably wait for Part 2 to do that one.
Because that's supposedly supposed to be the last Mission Impossible. So that's a year, at least a year, if not 2 years away. I'm trying to think if there's another franchise we do anytime soon.
There's no franchises left for the summer. We're not going to do Turtles. We're not going to do Equalizer franchise.
It's like 2 movies.
Yeah, there's not really any franchise stuff. I'm not doing Saw. I'm not doing Trolls.
No.
Yep. No. This might be the last franchise one for a while.
Yeah, but on the channel right now, we have this week's episode of the Weekly Crusaders, where Brian and I talk about 2 movies that came out during this week in movie history. We talk about The Shallows and Dope, both real interesting movies to talk about. Both are very passionate about them in our own way. Next week, we'll have the newest episode of the Weekly Crusaders, as well as, like we said, the Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny non-spoiler and spoiler review, as well as we'll be bringing Cinemasochism back with the release of Secret Invasion. So figure out what movie we're going to be talking about for that, to correlate with that movie, as well as many more episodes and shows popping up, as well as we're now Indiana Jones will be the official halfway point of the year, which means that we will be then coming out with the Movie Crusaders half-year review, where Brian and I will be going over our top 10 best films of the year so far, as well as our worst, our most surprising, and our disappointing films of the year. Will Indy be on that list? It'll be somewhere. It'll either be on, if it's for Brian, he don't like it, it's definitely going to be a disappointing, or it could be in his top 10. Either way, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny is going to be on that show in some form or fashion, because I don't see it being in the middle of the pack where Brian's not disappointed, or it not being in his top 10. If it isn't mentioned at all on that show, I will be shocked. But those are all the stuff that's coming up on the channel, so be on the lookout for that. But until next time, we are the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Wascrew. That is Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.